Well, that's a step in the right direction.
Hello, everybody. We are back again for another week of Gen Z Reviews. It's my pleasure to be joined by Luke Galliardo, our friend Gen X Man, Ian Morrison, Kyle Corwith, and World War Joe. Today, we're going to be talking about a really depressing film, The Passion of the Christ. You know, every week, we've had 51 weeks now of streaming on here, and we have not seen anything like this before. It's kind of sad going into a stream with sort of, sad spirits, because it's an utterly tragic tale of Jesus's passion, of course. And I don't think you need to be a Christian to appreciate this movie either. I think it's, it's, for whatever reason, I'm kind of curious to talk about this at some point in the stream, highly controversial. It's received a lot of crap. It has a terrible Rotten Tomatoes score, even though it had, I guess, a few Oscar nominations. So that's kind of strange how that turned out. But this is definitely a special film. And if you appreciate Mel Gibson as a director for other films he's done, then you're definitely going to want to be on board for this, because it's definitely it defined the Christian film series, right? I can't think of another Christian film that stands even close to this. Can you guys?
Probably not. I mean, this Prince of Egypt, The Chosen comes up, but yeah, this is definitely the one you think about whenever you talk about religious Christian movies.
Now, if you go further back, you got Cecil B. DeMille's Ten Commandments, you got Ben-Hur. But in terms of the modern age, there's no other movie that surpasses this one.
Yeah. Right. This is one of the big ones.
Yeah. Definitely deep. And I know, so we're going to be talking about the movie in our normal fashion. We're going to be breaking it down chapter by chapter. Also just talk about different generalizations. A lot of us are Christians here on the panel, so we might, shed our own insights as Christians into the film. And I think I'm the only one that saw this for the first time. Have any of you seen this for the first time, or is it just me?
I've seen this many times.
I actually watched, I guess, for the first time, really paying attention. I guess when it came out, I was way too young to understand it, and this is like my first time watching it fully, and it's not for the faint of hearts. I could understand why it's not for everybody.
Yeah, I watched this. I was going to watch this for the first time today for the stream, but I wanted to watch it alone for my first experience, because I really like depressing movies. Schindler's List is one of my favorites. This is definitely a totally different level, though, compared to that. And I watched this Sunday night alone, and gosh, it just hits you in different ways. Your first time watching, the second time watching. Today I watched it again, and it was like a totally different experience. And I think it was way more emotional this second time around. And I'm excited to get into it with you guys, because Mel Gibson, he created such an interesting movie here overall. And it's called The Passion of the Christ, and that is what we follow, is the passion. I thought there would be a lot of build up to the passion, which is sort of the Stations of the Cross. It's Jesus, his story leading up to being crucified, which isn't like that long of a period in time. So I kind of thought we were going to spend more time with Jesus before he entered into this series of pain, but we don't. We get right into the action, and the context is built up through flashbacks. I thought that was pretty well done. But this is also a really viscerally strange movie with a lot of the different imagery, symbolism, and shocking moments that you really don't see coming. So I'm pretty curious to see what you guys think about those when we get into it. Just in case people aren't aware, let me just give you a blanket statement of what this movie's about. If you haven't seen this movie, I definitely think we're all going to recommend this to you, because it's a masterpiece. It really is a masterpiece. We, of course, follow Jesus Christ, God made into man, who is vigorously beaten, tortured, and crucified, as we follow the horrors of his passion through a painstaking degree of detail, starting with Christ's agony in the garden at the Mount of Olives to his final death at the crucifixion. We witness an unimaginable display of love and mercy from the man dealt the most painful hand in human history. The Passion of the Christ dares to shed light on the unimaginable sacrifice that Jesus Christ made so that all of our sins may be forgiven. I think I kind of want to start the stream just generally considering all of your guys' experience with the film. How has The Passion of the Christ impacted you?
It showed. I mean, I'm
Go, Luke.
Oh yeah, okay.
Now,
I'll start off.
Tell us.
I grew up in going to a Catholic school and Catholic high school and everything, and I was taught everything. But once I saw it at such a young age, so it really like impacted me in a very strange way. But it really showed me the severity of the graphics and all the severity of what he went through, and how so in the title, passion, all the he's so passionate for what he was created for, to serve God and to influence others, and it's just so impactful what he endures without fighting back. It's still trying to wrap my mind around it. Like I've seen it multiple times, but tonight it's like watching it over again. It's just.
I think like what you said. I like what you said there. Obviously, you read the Bible and you hear the Bible read to you. You hear Jesus's story. You hear it through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? And it's all great. There's something different about seeing it, right? Visually represented in such a highly authentic fashion like this. And I was so surprised, seeing how much he went through. There isn't a single moment where he would raise his hand, raise his voice, or fight back in any fashion. And it didn't appear as weakness either. And I think that's so special that they were able to capture that sort of love and compassion for a character that I haven't seen in any other way, any other character that hasn't risen a hand or risen their voice or, given an odd look in response to being ridiculed or humiliated like Jim Caviezel did as Jesus in this. It was really, really something. What do you guys think?
Yeah, in this movie, yes. However, in Christ's life, that's not the case, as we know about the story when he went into the temple and made a whip.
Yeah.
Yes, which I think would have been a good addition. It would have been a great addition, actually, to have that in this movie to showcase the relationship that he had with the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Yeah, because I think that would have rounded the relationship more, and shown why they have so much animosity towards him. The main reason, obviously, is because they knew that he was the Messiah, that he was Christ, the Christ, Yahshua HaMashiach. They knew that. And how they knew that? Because Nicodemus came to him at night and told him that they knew. But they were bloodthirsty for him anyway.
Also, because like you think about it, Jesus is this guy from what is basically a backwater country town, Nazareth, and he's the son of a carpenter. He doesn't come from nobility. He doesn't come from a place of influence like so many of these scholars and priests did who wanted to have him crucified, and yet he's inspiring thousands and thousands of people, more than they are, because they've lost touch with them. They're more concerned about the traditions and that they've been trying to keep, and like enforcing these traditions just because of how it's the last form of real power that they have, being a country that's occupied by Rome at that time. So you got this basically nobody who's having more influence over the culture than them. And they knew who he was. And I also believe that they were definitely influenced by satanic spirits, because they basically had become so consumed with the appearance of being holy rather than actually being holy, having a real relationship with God, and encouraging the everyday people to have their own relationship with God. So when you have Jesus, who's actually doing what they were supposed to be doing, and he's having this much resonance, they just are like, we got to get rid of this guy. We got to get rid of this guy so we can continue to have the influence, the limited influence that the Romans have granted us. But in doing so, they only made him more influential throughout the centuries.
John 8:44, Jesus Christ told them that you belong to your father, the devil.
I think that's interesting you mentioned that, like, having that possession, because I felt like, you see all these people in this movie and they are just utterly, unabashedly happy with all of the torture and the hate that they're embracing. And it's like, I can't imagine people ever being able to embrace that much hate physically and show it towards somebody who is completely innocent and who's tortured. Like, they see him withered and broken and battered, and they just continue to have that same sort of hatred. They're never satisfied. I thought myself too that there had to be some sort of like demonic influence over that. And obviously you see the devil in a very interesting portrayal in this, traversing through the crowds. And I think that was sort of supposed to symbolize a bit of influence too. How did it impact you guys though? Because, everybody here was pretty passionate about the movie. And I think it's definitely just one of those films that can't help but impact you.
I think for me, because going to church every Sunday, the priest says the same thing over and over again. He suffered death and was buried. It doesn't put it into scope ever. Until you watch this movie, you can hear, hey, he was whooped a bunch of times. Hey, he was beaten. Hey, he was nailed. So it doesn't show it. I mean, the Bible, I feel like, doesn't really tell the story of it until when you watch it and you're seeing what this guy's physically going through. I just think that just turns it up such a knot that you wouldn't even remotely begin to explain that this actually happened to a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Gen X Man?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. I can remember when I first saw it, which was probably the first week it opened, back in the day.
2004.
And okay, yeah, and yeah, I had the misfortune, we'll say, of sitting in one of the front rows because that's all that was available. It was so well attended.
Yep.
And yeah, the scourging scene, I mean, to put it bluntly, it tore me apart. And afterwards I was exhausted by it, but left with the same impression you are all saying, that like you see the suffering, the physical suffering that you can imagine, at some level what that would be like. And it just makes that sacrifice that much more real. It's not just him hanging on a cross. It's him getting scourged and beaten and have everybody just yell and scream at him. And, every form of humiliation, he went through it.
It was unceasing too. I think that's something this movie really revealed to me, was how prolonged all of this was. It wasn't a 20-minute endure. You know what I mean? It seemed like it was multi-day, endless torture, of different kinds, psychological and physical. And, even like, I did not think about it, Jesus carrying the cross, how far of a distance it probably was. And it looked like he was walking really far through those streets. That never would have came to mind if I hadn't seen this. And the scourging, the scourging scene, of course, is, I think, the hardest to watch in the film as well. And, you hear them counting for the first bit of it, and it's already just insane how high they're counting. And then they move on to the second portion, and you see a lot of what's happening to Jesus when they're using the even more brutal weapon. And beyond that, when we shift over to Mary and Mary Magdalene, we keep hearing in the background, and we spend a bit of time with them. And it's like unbelievable just how extended all of this was. And, respect to Mel Gibson for showing us all of that, because it's just something that hasn't even come to mind. Like you said, like, some of these passages, it doesn't completely reveal how far it goes. Right. And I'm kind of curious to know how he knew it was extended in these periods like it was. But nevertheless, let's say hi to the chat a little bit here. We appreciate everybody watching today. I think we're all in kind of low spirits because it's a sad movie, but we're definitely happy to talk to you all about it. So thank you for joining us. Let's start with our friend Mega Spidey Man for €5. Good to see you, Mega Spidey Man. Appreciate your support as always. He says, fair play to you all talking about such a trying film. Have you watched any other films about Jesus, like King of Kings, Greatest Story Ever Told, etc.? You guys, anything quickly?
Yeah, I saw King of Kings earlier this year, and it's good. It's a great animated film. Obviously narrated by Charles Dickens. It's a pretty interesting take on it, but it's basic, basic Bible adaptation in animated format. Greatest story ever told. I believe I saw that once a long time ago. I would probably say my favorite film that was ever done that had to do with the story of Jesus would have to be Ben-Hur. Because
I gotta see that one too.
Yeah, it's a classic. I mean, the chariot race is obviously the big selling point, but when you get past that and you see the journey of Charlton Heston's character Judah and his growth, and of course when his encounters with Jesus, because you never see Jesus's face. It's always shot from a distance or shot from behind, but they never see his face, because I guess some people back then in Hollywood thought like, this is one of the most influential figures in history, and it's also, God in flesh. How can any human actor, pull that off? It's like just don't show his face, no dialogue, and it's still so effective when you see it. And other than that, this one I definitely would have to say is at the top for me, just because of it does show the brutality. It doesn't shy away from it. It's not like the sanitized versions of it that we've seen before, where they're trying to make it as watchable, especially for people in the church, because they're like, well, and also for kids as well to see it, because most versions of it is like a Bible school or Sunday school version, which is understandable. You don't want to traumatize the kids, but then at a certain point you have to understand the reality of the brutal torture that he was going through. And to be honest, this movie, as brutal as it is nothing compared to what the real thing would have been. The real thing would have been much worse. In some descriptions in the Bible, it says you couldn't even tell Jesus was a man. Wow. After all the torture and the scourging that he went through, it was even worse than this. So
there's more detail in Isaiah and some other things we can get into. One of the verses mentioned how his beard was pulled out.
Yes.
Wow. And there was a depiction in almost a comic book-esque booklet when I was growing up that my mother had. She had tracts and a bunch of biblical exhibitions of different stories of the Bible. And I remember this graphic novel. This really what it was. It was kind of actually my first graphic novel that I looked at, but it was a biblical story. And it showed a close-up of Christ with his beard being pulled out. And that's obviously a very adult thing to see. And whoever published that wasn't worried about it, but I'd never seen that depicted on video, and it's not even depicted here, And I also believe it wouldn't make sense for them to have not crucified Christ bare naked, and also to have whipped and mangled his groin area as well. So this movie would have been rated NC-17X if they showed more of what it was likely what it had likely had been.
Well, what's interesting about that is one of the criticisms leveled against the movie was how brutal it was.
They called it
but as you guys
the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre at one point. One of the publications did.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the Chainsaw Massacre is just massacre without purpose. There's meaning behind everything that happens in the movie, and that's why it's worth watching, because it's a historical event, whether you're a believer or not. But if you are a Christian, then the suffering, the pain all has purpose. It all has meaning. It all matters. And that's why it's so important for everybody to see it for themselves.
On that, I like to quote the actor that plays Jesus in the Chosen TV show, Jonathan Brumie, because he was asked about, season 6 going to have it, the crucifixion, our fans going to be turned off by it, and his response to that was, don't look away and go with Jesus through this, because he's there for you at your lowest moments, you could be there for him during his moments as well.
That's a good response. Yeah, I think that's interesting. They're getting to that point because you've spent so much time with Jonathan Rumi as Jesus through the series. So I mean, that's going to be like extra impactful when you see what happens to him in the end.
That's going to be very tough because we had 5 seasons of this really nice dude, and you just know what's going to happen soon. And season 1 is all nice and happy. It's like, oh, we're getting to the bad part, the ending of this.
Here, real quick,
also,
Ian.
Well, also, like, if you've seen any of the behind-the-scenes footage that they released for shooting the crucifixion scene for this next season that's coming, they never showed Jonathan Rumi on the cross, but they showed the actors on set, their reactions to it, and they're just like breaking down in tears and everything. You even, the actress who plays Mary Magdalene, Elizabeth Tabish, you see Dallas Jenkins, the creator of the show, hugging her and comforting her, because like of how just the emotions that they're experiencing as they're doing that scene, because they've been in this show for years now. I think the show started back in 2017. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, or
it's been on for a long time. Yeah, it's crazy.
But it's like they've become close, they've become a family and everything like that. So knowing that this next season, there's another season that's coming after it, which deals with the resurrection. But this season that's up and coming is definitely going to take a toll on them as a cast and crew and everybody who's worked on it. They basically become a family when you think about it.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be interesting because their next season is going to intersect with Mel Gibson's Resurrection Part 1.
Yeah.
That comes out next Easter, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, we got to wait till next year. I'm glad we watched this now. This is pretty good timing. Real quick, I want to say hi to our friend Horwood Nads for $5. We appreciate that, Nadia. God is great. Christ is King. Bless you all. Thanks, Nadia. She watched this over the weekend, so I'm glad we kind of gave her the thought to give it another watch. So I'm glad you watched it, Nadia. We appreciate your support.
How record breaking do you think the new one's going to be? Do you think it's? I mean, just put
the resurrection of the Christ.
It might surpass the first one.
Obviously, but I'm talking like billions, 2 billion. We're talking. Really? No?
I think a healthy estimate would be around 1 billion. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The first one, this one that we're talking about right now, was around 600 million worldwide. A little more than that. But if you adjust that for inflation, I bet that's going to be around 1 billion today. So I'm going to say a healthy estimation is going to be around 1 billion for the resurrection of the Christ.
Wow. Yeah, I know we're
Good
definitely
going in position.
It'll be weird. It'll be weird not having Jim Caviezel in that role.
I still don't know, dude, what exactly this means. I heard about the news that they're going to be recasting. I'm not too convinced about why or how they're doing that. I wonder if it's going to be some amalgamation, or because they are talking about, and they have to most likely because this is a part 1, part 2 for the resurrection. They're going to have different parts of it have Jim Caviezel, maybe. This is just a prediction. And they're going to have another actor portray him in a different era. I just wonder about that.
I'm wondering if like this new young actor will be like Jesus, resurrected form in the new body, like a different face. And
that would be tough because we saw Caviezel at the end of Passion raise up in the tomb. So
that's what I'm thinking. I think that's how they could get away with it, even though that moment happened at the very end. But
I think from what I've heard, the reason why they did the recasting was because originally they were going to bring back the original cast, talking about doing like de-aging and stuff. But Mel Gibson said that what they found, they realized that would be too costly on them, that would take up a lot of the budget. So they figured it would cost a lot less just to do it with new actors. So maybe they might still do de-aging or something, but from what it looks like, they just decided to recast everybody. I mean,
he's going to be in it.
Okay.
I'm not saying that he's going to be in at some point, though, I think.
I just think he has to be.
Yeah, you have to have him.
Somehow they're gonna figure it out.
It don't make sense.
It's like the Scream 7 situation. How do you get Stu Macher? Oh, we're gonna do AI. Well, they're gonna find some way to get Caviezel in there. I don't know.
Yeah. Nice. Here, let's move. All right, let's go out of the first chapter here. So, here we are, very beginning, right at the start of the film. Jesus weeps and mourns at the Mount of Olives, aware that he will endure an unimaginable series of pain and suffering. He desperately pleads with God to free him of this burden. His trust in God overshadows his fear for the pain he will endure, so he accepts God's will and destiny to save the world from sin. The devil, preying on his torment, attempts to shed doubt into his heart until Jesus Christ dispels him and crushes the skull of a snake seeking to destroy. Checking on his disciples, he finds them asleep as a barrage of soldiers race towards him with Judas at their side. So my first question for all of us here in this very beginning chapter, opening moments, is how does the film portray Jesus's internal struggle in the garden? And what does it reveal about his full humanity and divinity?
It's a paradox that I still don't understand. God in human form, but he still has emotional suffering and pain. More so, even worse, to the point where he's sweating blood, which is a real thing that actually can occur from extreme stress. And this is what they portray, thankfully. So that's in the text. But I still wonder today is just, it's just interesting to think about the creator of the universe implanting himself into his own creation and then experiencing the consequences of when you're in that creation, in that vessel, Yeah. So I don't understand it, and I never will until the next place. But that's the dilemma there.
One of the things about the passion, and I think the passion is often associated with that Garden of Gethsemane scene, is that he is experiencing deep anxiety, at a level most of us will never experience. And yet it's a very human thing to do. I bet everybody here has been on pins and needles at different points in their life, and maybe you even feel bad about it, that you're worrying or just scared of what's coming. And yet that's exactly what Jesus felt and showed him. He didn't hide it. He didn't bury it. He didn't pretend that he wasn't feeling those things. And for me, that's very meaningful as a warrior at heart.
Nice. That's you, Gen X, man. I was surprised by how emotional he was too, and expressive. That's just something I hadn't really thought about. But I guess it's called agony in the garden for a reason, right? It's not just him praying; it's pleading, and it's almost like a desperate attempt that God, if you're able to get me out of this, I foresee what's to come, and I don't want to endure that pain. But if it is your will, let thy will be done. Because he knows what's coming, and if you hadn't seen this movie before and you heard the stories, you fear for what he's about to endure and what you're about to watch, but you really don't know if you haven't seen this movie before, because it is just, as we said, the scope of the torture that he endures is just unbelievable. And we were all watching this. There was 4 of us watching it here today at my place. And we were just, constantly asking ourselves, how is he able to do it? How is he able to keep going? And it's like, it's kind of inexplicable how he was able to endure so much pain without passing out. But, I think he was just that strong of a person, right? He was able to, he's just that tough mentally and physically. But, he's such a normal looking guy, you wouldn't really think twice about it if he wasn't, Jesus Christ. So it's, I really liked this opening bit. I like the human moments in this film when we get a glimpse into how raw, the raw emotion that Jesus really has. He's not just, God made into flesh. He's a person, and he has feelings, and he loves, and he feels pain, and that's, refreshing.
I like how this scene and a lot of the scenes of it, they really aren't explained enough. Like, obviously, if this was a Netflix movie, they would pound the plot every 5 seconds into you. But I think watching this movie, if you've never read a Bible before in your life or have any idea what's going on, it'll make you think about picking up one. It's
interesting that you say that, Joe. I was literally about to say something along the same lines of the way this movie opens. If someone is not familiar with the Bible or the story, and you just treat it as a movie unto itself, is this an odd way to open a movie where you just jump in to already the main character facing his death essentially in the next 12 hours, and it's just you'd have to watch it from that perspective, and I haven't. So the question of looking at the movie, and I'm thinking about it right now, is how would that look from a blind perspective, so to speak?
I think
it might work just as well, because as long as there is clarification of why it's going on, and this is in the aspect of the political intrigue, which this is. People don't talk about that, but this movie actually has political intrigue and facets to it, and political conspiracy, in that the hierarchy Jews are trying to get Christ killed, and it's a power struggle between the Roman Empire and them, and Pontius Pilate, and some other figures as well. But that's essentially and you need those subtitles to tell you what's going on. Originally, Mel Gibson was thinking about releasing this without subtitles, and I don't think it would work in those aspects if he had. However, the visuals in the beginning of Christ outside of those political moments and heavy dialogue scenes, it does work because the visuals do convey a lot.
Man, that would be crazy if there was no subtitles. I hadn't even considered that.
I started watching it the last time without subtitles, a majority of it, and that's why I say that a lot of it does work, aside from the bickering when he's inside the temple, or the politics between the Jews and the Romans.
Yeah, back to your earlier point there, Kyle. I do think if you aren't already familiar with the story, it is a little weird. You don't know exactly what Jesus is experiencing or why he's acting the way he is. I mean, I had the thought that it kind of looks like he has a stomach ache or something. At the beginning? He does. Yeah, at the beginning, because there is no introduction to the situation that they're in. You just see him kind of doubled over and in pain, and you may not know why if you weren't already familiar with the storyline. What's going to happen next.
True.
See, here's the thing. Actually, a little fix that maybe could have improved the beginning for everybody, in fact, new people as well as ones that are familiar with it, is just very subtly and very quickly on the shot when the camera's coming in onto Jesus in the garden and in the dark, is just these quick flashes without any sound of what's to come.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that. Yeah,
of the crucifixion, from either the shots of his eyes really close up, and then it's from his POV looking at the crowd as he's imbalanced holding the cross. That kind of stuff I think could have improved the beginning a little bit.
I disagree with that. I actually disagree with it. I think it should be deliberate the way they did it, that it makes you want to read into it further. And I would say with the subtitles of it, I was watching it on Amazon last night. You can't put it in English. I don't know if you can get it in English anywhere else, though. So you actually have to watch this movie. You have to read it. This is not background noise at all. Like, Oppenheimer, I probably watched 5 times purely as workout background noise and cleaning stuff. This one, you have to sit there. You have to watch it. You're not scrolling on your phone. So the same thing with that, it opens up in such an odd way. If you don't know anything about the story, you're kind of confused. But afterwards, I think you're going to have enough intrigue to pick up the Bible. So I'm really curious about what Mel Gibson would say to that.
Yeah, I
just the adjustments of having a flash, quick flashes at the beginning.
What you said right there is a perfect filmmaker way of having it, but I think he didn't want to have it that way, so you'll be intrigued about it. I guess that what you're saying might be maybe giving away too much. So I don't.
Yeah, it kind of leaves me wanting more.
Yeah, I'm not
and being
disagreeing with you. I'm just saying,
interested in
like,
what's coming.
I just think it might not be what he wanted to go with it.
Yeah, it's more about the build up, and the anticipation, because, even people who've never really read the Bible, most everyone has heard of the story of Jesus. They may not know all the details because they haven't actually studied, but pretty much everyone in the world, only in a few places, and do they not really know anything about the Bible, but most people do. So when you see that opening shot of him, I think it's actually works really well. The way how they're slowly building up, especially that part with him when he's praying and the devil is taunting him and such. That it leaves much to the imagination of what's going to happen, and then when you actually see it, the torture sequences, the him carrying the cross through the city, and then the nailing. If you have those flashbacks like you were talking about, Kyle, it kind of gives a little bit of it away. So
even with the close up of the eyes, you're not actually seeing all of what's going on. They're teases and of showing that agony is to come, and that is why he is weeping and in tribulation emotionally in the garden.
Yeah, I could work. I think, yeah.
Well, Ian, real quick, I'm glad you brought up the devil in that moment, because that was, that's one of those polarizing images when the devil appears while Jesus is in agony, of course. That really stood out to me. It's a strange moment. And that's also another consideration I didn't really, that didn't come to mind when I've heard the story of, Jesus praying to God, asking for, help in that time of severe agony. And I thought it was done very well. I think, something I appreciate about this movie is how honest it is and just authentic it is overall. I feel like all of us, especially me, there's so many times when you're trying to do something and you just feel like there's some sort of interference. You feel doubt. You hear these doubting words. And, if I was in Jesus's shoes in this point, the devil was feeding them messages that make sense. If you're going to doubt something, they make sense, and they sound like messages I've heard about my own problems in my own life. And that takes a special writer to be able to bring that out in such an honest, real fashion like it did in this. And then we continue to see similar points of authenticity with the devil throughout the movie, I think. And the devil is so strange in this because it's not this bright red, big horned devil monster, right? It's sort of veiled as this androgynous, like
you can say it, transgender.
Well, I mean, what would you call it? I don't know what you call it. I don't know if it's a dude or a girl. It's sort of in the middle, and it's such a strange representation that I feel like it's supposed to be almost like blasphemous against Mary, because it sort of looks like Mary, right? And obviously you get the scene where you get the blasphemous moment where you see the devil supposed to portraying Mary with baby Jesus, but it's some strange ugly dead baby thing. But
I think they're called midgets, but
that was not the case here.
They did actually say that was their intention, that in that moment specifically when Jesus is being whipped and the devil is holding that dwarf actor as a baby, it's definitely him mocking his mother, and I guess you could say that that's like the Catholic part of Mel Gibson doing that. For me, I'm thinking like it's like saying, you're going through this horrendous pain right now. Your mother's right over there watching, and there's nothing she can do about it. And even if she wanted to, you would not let her do it, because that you have to go through all this pain in order to achieve, paying the price for everybody's sins. So it's in that little moment there where the devil feels like he's got, he's got some ability to jab at Jesus, but of course Jesus completely ignores it and continues to endure the pain. So it's it definitely has that meaning to it that like you said, that is what Mel Gibson intended. But it's like you see all these moments where they show the devil, you know, just tormenting not just Jesus but also Judas after his betrayal and everything, you know, because the Bible says that that Satan is this roaming lion seeking whom he may devour.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, couldn't do it with Jesus, but he did it with Judas because Judas's heart was never really in the, you know, what Jesus was trying to do. You know, I mean, it didn't showcase that much in the film why he betrayed him, but we do see that in The Chosen. You know, he wanted Jesus to be this great military leader. That was what so many people thought the Messiah was going to be, but that was never what Jesus was going to be. You know, he said, "My kingdom is not of this earth; it's of heaven." And so when that didn't work out the way Judas thought it should, you know, he's like, "Well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm backing the wrong person. So now I need to I need to save face. I need to make some money off of it, you know." Or like in The Chosen, the last season, he says, what if he really is the Messiah and, you know, he gets arrested and that forces him to show his true power and finally lead us against the Romans. And then in that scene in the show, Peter tells him, that's you. That's still you. That's not what Jesus wanted. You're still thinking about what you want. Because so many people, and I've struggled with it myself, have this idea of how we want God to bless us in our lives. We have this preconceived idea of what, well, God, I pray for you to do this for me, and that this is how I want you to do it. But like God's like, that's not how I work. I don't do it the way you want it. I know how I see things that you don't. If I see something that could potentially harm you and is going to do more damage to your spirit than good, I'm going to close that door. But if you keep knocking, I'll just step away and let you go. But if I close it, it's for a reason, you know. But I will open the right door for you at the right time if you just trust me, you know. And sadly, Judas didn't.
You know what's crazy is the actor who plays this little baby devil. The actor looks just like that still.
He really does.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys
he's still
saw,
alive, huh?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I saw a picture.
They're gonna bring him back,
like Wikipedia or something. But I was really surprised. He still looks like that. 20 years later. So.
Yeah, I just looked him up now because I wasn't sure if he was a dwarf, and yeah, it's the same guy. Yeah, just older, but.
I think
here, real quick, let's get to a few more of these chats. Thank you all again for chatting with us. Just with Jared, good to see you, buddy. Yeah, we'll just get to some chats before we move into the next chapter of this story, because man, there's just so much to talk about here, and I'm excited to get into it. Just with Jared says, nice job on verses yesterday, brawler. Thanks, man. It was awesome.
Dude, you had a couple of good jabs in there, so.
Good jabs. Did I? Oh well, yeah, I guess I did. But
metaphorically speaking,
that was fun. That was a good time. Thanks, Jared. I appreciate it. Definitely an honor to join. Our friend Proctfile is here. Good evening, boys. How are we doing tonight? We're doing good. This is a serious film, so we're handling it respectfully, and we're not in the best of spirits because it's a hard movie to talk about, but we're here and we're proud to be here.
Yeah, I'm trying to add some levity into it by mentioning, the midget actor and all that stuff.
Yeah, good one. Nice note. Yes, Rebel Rose is here. Hey, boys. Oh, good. You came on your night of work. Thanks for joining us. Oh, look who's here. Megan the Texan. Excited to hear everyone's thoughts. We're excited to hear your thoughts, Megan. Let us know in the chat. Oh, new person here. H. Drews. I don't know who you are. One of the best movies ever made. Really excited for y'all to cover this one. Ah, cool. You think it's one of the best movies ever made? Wow. I'd say, yeah, it's up there. Thanks, stranger person.
She reminds me of something.
Yeah, just with Jared. Kind of crazy that this is the first time you watched it, Brawler. Yeah, man. Gosh, I'm glad. I'm so glad I saw it. This is a staple. I wish I would have watched this long ago. I have the VHS tape up here somewhere. So it's right in the middle.
Didn't this come out when you were born? You were born in 02?
02, yeah. That's
okay,
right.
so you were A wee lad.
That's
a
right.
wee
I saw it in
baby.
theaters. I saw it in theaters at 2. I went alone. Yeah.
You know, another movie that Jim Caviezel did that came out the actual year that you were born.
Was it? It wasn't Paul, Apostle of Christ.
No, that came years later after Passion. Count of Monte Cristo.
Nice.
Ooh, that's what you should do.
We should do that sometime.
It's like
That's a 10 out of 10 movie,
That's
by the
like
way.
my
Whoa.
third favorite
Yes, it
movie.
is. Yeah, and it's like when my family first saw that film, that was the film that introduced me to Jim Caviezel. We said that guy should definitely play Jesus. 2 years later, we get this film.
Whoa, for real?
Boing.
Dang.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, good.
Skinny Henry Cavill was in that too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he is skinny. He just looks young.
He was
That's-
he was like, you know,
He's not really.
he
he's
was
not
very
really that
small back
skinny.
then.
No, he's normal looking. He's just not buff and
I
built.
want to see him that
He's just
young.
young.
I mean, that was a
Yeah,
long
yeah.
time ago.
And he's
10
got this
years ago.
high pitched voice.
Excuse
me, lady.
He's in Count of Monte Cristo? He's in
Yeah.
that? Okay.
As
Yeah.
Jim Caviezel's son.
Maybe we'll watch that at some point.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
And
Oh,
he's
look
got
who's
big
here.
eyebrows.
Benjamin Slack, not Schlack. Benjamin Slack. Good to see you, Ben. I appreciate you guys talking about this film. It's very important to me and many others. Oh, thanks, Ben. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'll highlight you. Thanks for
Cheers,
joining
Ben.
us. We appreciate it. Cheers. 3 cheers to Ben. Tiffany for Bush. Hello, Tiffany. You're a new friend. I agree. Jim Caviezel portrayed Jesus so beautifully. Gosh, yes. I'm excited to talk about that. We're going to save that towards the end of the stream because,
Thanks,
I mean,
Tiffany.
that is like a once in a lifetime role. There's no acting there. It's like he's not even acting. It's just so real. It's insane. Thanks for joining us, Tiffany. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Ben says this film is dripping with oil, heavenly divine aura radiating off the film that has never been conveyed before conveyed before our since in a movie. I don't know what you're saying there exactly. But yeah, maybe ever been conveyed before in a movie. Yeah, good stuff, Ben. We get it. We got the theme.
Or
guy has-
since.
The
Or
guy has
since.
one type.
He had a
Oh,
misspelling. He has a
okay.
misspelling, but he says or since. Ever before or since in a movie.
Spell
Okay.
check.
Ben,
you jerk.
Ben, you gotta write the video essay for this movie. You know.
Horror with Nat said, I cried every time I saw it in theaters 3 times with different groups of people. Wow.
Oof.
I saw Sound of Freedom. My gosh, I loved Sound of Freedom. I saw that one 3 times in theaters and with different groups of people. That was sort of my token film to bring people to. And, you know, Jim Caviezel was amazing in that too.
You only
we
cried-
need him and more.
You only cried 3 times, Nadia. I remember when I saw it at 14, I couldn't stop. That was the thing. I saw it with my sister, one of my older sisters, and
Oh, she says her
Yeah,
husband's going
that
to be
was
watching
intense.
for the first time this weekend. That's cool.
Make sure you have the tissues nearby.
Oh, yeah, you're definitely going to need those. Oh, yeah. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Jim Caviezel got hit and mentioned how excruciating the pain was. Yeah, hit by lightning.
But he also got hit with the whipping scene as well.
it was one of the rods, right? The first part of it.
I think so. Yeah, because I saw like the behind the scenes bonus features, like the visual effects. They CGI'd the cat o' nine tails in
Correct.
later on.
So there was nothing to hit him with. Yeah, it was just
Correct.
exactly, except for the rods, because they had
Yeah.
this basically a blockage, a stopper behind his back for certain shots. So they were hitting it, and at one point, one of them got past it and whacked him on the back for real.
Yeah.
I think that's even on there. I think his reaction to that real strike is in the film.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
Oh,
surprised.
really? Wow.
He said
Dang.
it took the wind out of him really bad, and he almost got really angry with the actor who did it. Like he said he almost started to swear, but he held back. He held back. He's like, I know who I'm playing. I'm like, it's a mistake, but he got through it. Thankfully, he went through so much pain doing.
You know
this film.
something? I really like Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson, and obviously he's not a Hollywood guy, but not only is he my favorite actor, I just love so much of what he stands for. And you know, I'm a Catholic, and I always like hearing his insights and his hearing about his story of faith and whatever else, and obviously how much he's sacrificed to make this movie and what he's going on to do to to preach more about it and talk about the uncomfortable segments of it, despite all the odds against him. And something I appreciated was recently, I believe his house caught on fire or something like that, and he lost a lot of his possessions.
Dude, it burned down.
It was
just destroyed in the fires.
And he was optimistic about it because he said that he knew that God was preparing him for something big. Yeah. And that is just so inspiring. That's
going to be awesome to hear how that connects to the making of the resurrection, because that was literally right before or during the production of the resurrection. So that intersected either before or during. Yeah, that'll be interesting how that played a part.
Yeah, I'm very curious. Let's get on to this second chapter here. So we're pretty far from the crucifixion, but here we are. The soldiers take Jesus and they torment him along the way, throwing him off the side of a bridge, which was really a shocker for me seeing this the first time. Mary, Mother of God, she gathers Mary Magdalene and John to find Jesus at the house of the high priest. Jesus is brought before the Sanhedrin and Caiaphas at night, and he is accused of blasphemy for claiming to be the Son of God and the Messiah. Witnesses give conflicting testimonies during this strange capture at night. I didn't really understand, like, just reading the Bible, that like a lot of this was sort of like it wasn't like, it was irregular. Like, this wasn't exactly like a sanctioned thing to do. The Sanhedrin was kind of going against themselves and their own beliefs, which I thought was interesting. This movie, made that a little more clear. And through this time, Jesus, he affirms his identity, leading to a serious outrage because, he chooses silence over speaking a lot of the time, and he reveals who he is and that he's the Son of God, and they do not like that. And from that point forward, he's lightly beaten, which is utterly humiliating and hard to watch itself. And he's spat upon, he's mocked. And amongst the chaos and humiliating disrespect, Peter denies Jesus 3 times in the courtyard, just as Jesus Christ had foretold. And Mary, mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and John, they witness the events from afar. As all this is happening, Judas, he's also there watching it happen, and he's filled with remorse, and he's really tormented by these strange demonic visions. We see a strange vision of sorts at the bridge, which is like a jump scare in the film. And after all this happens, he gets kind of like chaotically ambushed by demon children, which is, an odd way to portray demons and the devil, but I think it's pretty effective. He tries to return the silver that he got paid. What was it, like 30 shillings? He's rejected. Yep. He's rejected, and he's chased into the deep of the desert by those man-eating demonic children. And this is just a crazy moment. It's crazy to think that this is like something that happened, and he wasn't able. He just couldn't. He couldn't deal with all of that chaos that was going on, and the devil was just tearing him up. And you saw his face was in hives, his lips looked terrible, and as he's kind of like going nuts in the desert, the kids, they disappear, and he kind of has a moment of clarity, but for whatever reason, to the side of himself is the corpse of a rotting mule, and that kind of sends him off, and he hangs himself, and that's the end of his story. We'll get to this point a little later because I think there's a lot to talk about with Judas's story. But for me, during this second chapter, one of the most effective scenes in the film was where we see Jesus dangling from the bridge. This is like, you think of the scourging and you think of, the crucifixion and carrying the cross, right? But you don't really think of a lot leading up to that, like physically wise. And this movie shows that Jesus went through a lot of different torment physically. And even though it wasn't super graphic compared to what we see later, I found it really difficult to watch even just these smaller acts against him. Just smacks in the face, punched in the face, being thrown off a bridge is insane. And even like seeing the high priest spit in his face, that was really hard to watch. There was something about where that's not something you ever see in movies, is someone getting seriously spat on in the face and them taking it, especially. That's really unique.
Happens in Titanic.
Oh, does it? Okay, well, there's one example. But, nothing's coming to mind for me. And I thought that just kind of, obviously, it just adds layers and layers of humility and compassion to his character. But, if we're considering the moment where he's thrown off the bridge, you have this really moving moment where he's in, I can't imagine the shock your body would be in being thrown off the bridge. Obviously, he's chained up, so he's like caught. Yeah. But he's like in shock, and he looks over at Judas, and there's this twinkle in his eye as his face is all muddled, and he's in excruciating pain. And Judas is sitting there hiding in fear, and Jesus, he's pulled up from the bridge by the dickhead guards, and Judas is really freaking out now. And even worse yet, to his left is this strange demon ghost entity that leers towards him. Why do you think Mel Gibson chose to include this sequence in the movie? Because this was very interesting, and I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Well, we can get into the aspects of how the film doesn't delve into what the scripture says in relation to Judas and his connection to Satan. In Luke and in John, it talks about how Satan entered him, and he was the prompter for why the betrayal happened. And I think the reason that the remorse occurred afterwards, and it makes sense, is because there was a sudden contrast of the Satan leaving him and the guilt of what had happened, and that's why he killed himself. And every time, every portrayal of Judas, and in this one, I feel a sense of empathy towards Judas. I wish that he hadn't killed himself, and but that was the route that he took, because I don't think he was irredeemable. If he had chosen to, because he went back, and that's historically accurate. He went back and he gave back those silver pieces. I mean, if that was done without the influence of Satan, the guy's an idiot. So all of a sudden, it's like he went on a bender and then he did all that. It's like, no, that happens in a short period of time. It only makes sense if there were satanic influence in there, which the scriptures talk about. Yeah. And there's one conflicting aspect about that. In even though I like it, I like that Satan is in the garden with Christ, but there's a conflict there, because how could Satan be there and also be influencing Judas at the same time when Satan is not omnipresent? Is monopresent.
This whole thing kind of brings up that there's this other reality or plane of experience that is, it's happening at the same time that all these things are happening to Jesus on the outside. There's things happening on the inside of him and on the inside of other people. There's other forces at work, in other words, in the spiritual plane. And so it is good that he took some risks and kind of wove that in here, because it's not all just about people beating up one another. There's also a spiritual level of infliction that's occurring.
Yeah, and I like the callback that occurs when Christ crushes the head of the snake. It's referencing Genesis there. Yeah. So
Adam
I like that.
Serpent.
Yeah, but it's not in the scriptures that it occurred. So, but I'm okay. The movie it's still a movie. We're not watching a documentary here. Like we do have to remind ourselves that this is still a movie. It's a great movie. It's one of the most profound faith movies, I guess. I will confidently say this is a faith-based movie. This is how faith-based movies should be like. Not the God is not dead and Kirk Cameron movies that take place on Christmas that were shot for 12 days for $10,000. Okay, not that crap.
You got to start somewhere. Even the Kendricks brothers. I'm a fan of the Kendricks brothers films. I mean, as cheesy as they are, especially when they started out, they did begin to get a little bit more serious. But they were like, hey, we started out doing movies that we wanted our church to be able to see, because we're like, oh, they're not making films that we as Christians would feel comfortable watching ourselves. so we're just going to make them ourselves. Yeah, they started out really hokey and cheesy, but over time they've improved. Even the smaller budget ones that the Kendricks brothers did.
You're referring to the filmmakers that did Fireproof and Flywheel or something?
Facing the Giants and Courageous. Courageous, I think, is one of their better films, because, they get to have a little bit more action in it, and they actually stepped up their game with that one. And by that point, they'd gotten enough credit among other filmmakers to where they were able to bring on more professionals to help them out, and they haven't really done anything like Courageous since then, but I like them for what they are. Yeah, sure. I definitely like something more like this that's a little bit more serious. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be where you have the main character like Kirk Cameron in War Room sitting in some open field praying to God on a log and all that. Yeah. It's hokey and stuff. It also has its place. So there's a part of me that is like, yeah, this feels too Hallmarkish, but then there's another part of me that's like, I can appreciate it for what it is.
Well, so you and I differ on that, Ian. I don't appreciate those movies at all. I think they're cringe.
Are we just dissing Kevin Sorbo movies here? What's going on here?
you can diss the movies. You don't have to diss Kevin Sorbo. I mean, that's a different discussion unto itself. But Fireproof was made in 2008. Yes. Passion of the Christ was made in 2004. They were saying that they weren't seeing Christian movies like that they want to see.
You got to be honest.
Did they not like Passion of the Christ then? Yeah. Why didn't they take a cue from this movie and actually make an adult Christian movie with great filmmaking?
These guys were ministers at their church.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So they make it like how ministers would make it.
They made a sermon 90 minutes long.
They made a sermon.
So, that's something interesting about Passion of the Christ is it's not preachy at all. No. It's just it's the story, right?
Yeah.
And it's a horrifying story. I mean, a lot of this movie is a horror film of sorts, right? And it's not trying to convince you that he's a great guy or anything, but you just see who he is, and you can't help but to accept the fact that he's a great, loving person who cares about people so far that he's willing to ask for God to forgive them as they are brutally torturing him. That's like something you can't even fathom you yourself doing amidst excruciating pain caused by them. And that's what he's doing a lot of the time in this movie. And it's, that's inspiring enough itself. But
it is. And I will willingly admit that I couldn't do that.
No,
I mean, I've had instances a lot less than this of tribulation of, I was bullied in school. I know what it's like to have conflict or people hate you, right? I had a discussion with a friend who was black, and he said, you have no idea what racism is like. Well, I said, no, not the exact context of that, but I know what it's like to be hated. So in instances of, saying, oh, I forgive them immediately, it's that's very difficult. But it makes sense that the everlasting holder of love and forgiveness would do that. And that's where we take the cues from.
Yeah, I like in the movie where they have those other scenes from earlier interactions he had with his disciples, where he was saying the things that that were important, and once you saw him suffering, you realized how significant those sayings were. Like love your enemies, do good to those who mistreat you. If they hate you, remember they hated me first. And once you see him being hated, then those words mean just a lot more.
You're right. Those are like, that's the opportunity to see his message, right? And to be preached to, but it's not preachy at all. No. It just fits. And it's part of the context of how he got there and who he is and why people follow him and care about him, especially, Mary Magdalene and John, right? So it works. That's special. I want to talk about the this strange trial, like the when he's taken to the to the high priest's house at night, and all those people are collected there. It's very unorganized. It's like an unorganized trial against Jesus. What stood out to you guys during that entire sequence?
Yeah, it's like Congress. Anyway, tangent.
It wasn't a trial. They knew what was the outcome instantly. There was no debate, any of this stuff. It's like, nope, we're putting an end to this guy right now. We're all just gonna shout, scream, make the Roman Pontius go along with it, and that's it.
Yeah, and also another thing that they don't show that I've heard is in the scriptures is that Jesus was actually blindfolded as well. And so when they hit him, one of the things they ask him is, "Who hit you?" And it's another form of mockery.
That's a good point, Ian.
But like in that scene, when you see those two priests who actually stand up and say, "This is horrible what you guys are doing. You guys are just putting this man in front of all these people. This isn't a real trial." The one guy calls it a travesty, and then the other one says, "What? Who called this in the middle of the night? Where are the others?" So you know that these
sleeping. Jeez, I mean,
yeah, they're all sleeping, but they only brought this select group of priests together because they all knew these guys were going to side with us. They're going to side with us so we can get Jesus crucified.
Politics, dude. Politics.
It's politics. But and then of course, you have that moment with Peter. That part always tears me up whenever I see that. Just the look on his face. That actor absolutely did a great job portraying the regret, the shame that Peter, went through in that moment. When I was a kid, I used to watch these Bible cartoons, the greatest adventure stories from the Bible. It was from Hanna-Barbera, but it was like these young archaeologists time traveling through different points in the Bible, and eventually they came to the story of Easter. And when they brought up the part about Peter's denying Jesus 3 times, one of them said how like he did it mainly so he could protect himself because he was afraid of being arrested. And it's like that's a very human understanding, very human way to understand that situation. I mean honestly, if we see this person, this man that we've looked up to and followed for these 3 years being horrendously tortured like that, and we say we will stand by you even to the point of death, but then we actually see it. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing entirely to actually go through with it. And you see that part of Peter, and he denies him 3 times, and he feels absolute shame. And if anything, he probably might have done the same thing that Judas did, feeling that kind of shame, but he didn't, thank God. And then when Jesus is resurrected, you don't see this in the movie, but in the Bible, it tells us how after Jesus was resurrected and he met the disciples out along the coast, they're out fishing, and they see him on the shoreline calling out to them, and Peter knows that it's him. He's the one who just jumps out of the boat, swims straight to him. And then that night, while they're camping out on the shore, Jesus asks Peter 3 times. 3 times he says, "Peter, do you love me?" And each time he says, "Yes, Lord." The 3rd time he says, "Lord, you know all things. You know I love you." That 3 times him asking him that question was him basically giving him a way to undo the 3 times denying him.
Yeah, he was replaying what had happened, and essentially he's listen, Christ had sarcasm. He had a way, like he's with his buddy essentially. Like essentially he's with his brother, his son, whatever way you want to call it. I saw a depiction of this in, I think it was a claymation version, and they portrayed that scene of him asking, "Do you love me, Peter?" And each time Peter would answer, it would be, "I think I know what's going on. I think I know what he's doing right now." And by the 3rd time, he says, You know I do, Lord. You know I do. It's like he knew he was replaying the moment, but it's very human that by the end of it, I like to imagine that they had a laugh between each other.
Oh yeah,
and there was forgiveness there.
It's kind of like in Bruce Almighty, the part when God is reading off all those insults that Bruce made to him earlier in the film. He's like, smite me, oh mighty smiter.
Yeah.
And he says, now I'm not much for blaspheming, but that last one made me laugh.
Yeah, I remember that movie getting some shit for being like blasphemous to portray God in that way of, he's okay with blasphemy. I think, I think God has a sense of humor and Christ proves it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I love the scenes in this movie.
It doesn't give you a pass to blaspheme, obviously. But it's
correct. But in terms of God knows the distinction and your heart and intention of a joke. So this, in terms of Christ having humor and being joyful, he's the ultimate everlasting holder of love, joy, peace, patience, etc. You don't think that he has a great sense of humor?
Well, okay, so it's funny you're mentioning laughter. I didn't want to talk about this yet, and I don't want to make a big thing about it, but I think something interesting about this is how Mel Gibson uses laughter as a tool obviously a tool of mockery, but I mean, all of the most evil people in this movie cannot stop laughing. You have different layers of all of these. You have King Herod's people, they're drunken and they're laughing. You have the Roman soldiers, they're drunken, they're laughing. You have the chief priests and all of those floozies, they're laughing at them. And you have the people that are with them, they're laughing. I think it's interesting how he chose to use that. And I think there's I don't know the exact scripture, but I believe there's something in the Bible where it references like haughty language and laughter. I think laughter is both used in a way to show happiness and also as a way of evil. I wasn't able to find that anywhere, but I believe I've heard that at some point. And I just thought it was interesting how many instances there were of laughter in this by the enemy and how it was used to show, a totally different depth and layer of how deeply troubled a lot of people are in this situation. Probably because, obviously they're laughing at Jesus and during his humiliating moments.
Well, it's a reflection of the enemy celebrating Jesus's, death, because the Bible says that when Jesus was buried in the tomb and when he died, the demons and the devil were celebrating in hell. And then just before the resurrection, it says how suddenly there was Jesus appears to them and tells Satan, "Give me the keys of life and death," and that's when he's resurrected from the grave. But the whole thing that you see throughout this film of all these people, especially the ones who hate him, let's not forget there are people who are watching this horrendous thing happening to him, that are pleading for them to leave him alone, to show him mercy, but all these people who are mocking him, laughing at him and beating on him, again, it's influenced by Satan, because they're filled with hatred, they're filled with just evil, and also because this was a form of entertainment back then. They're used to it, especially the Romans. You think about it, they're used to torturing people just for pure entertainment. We've seen it depicted in so many other films, whether it's during this period in history or during the medieval times, and where torture, executions were just seen as just entertainment. It was basically like their form of late night talk show hosts
or reality television.
Reality television.
That's grim.
So, it's horrible because they were so used to it. So yeah, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, they'd watch guys kill each other in coliseums for fun, you know, and
Yeah.
they didn't seem to care too
The
much about that.
gladiators. And it's like, so when you have people, you have a culture that is that used to torture, it's not that hard to believe that Satan and his demons would be influencing their actions, or in some form of capacity. It doesn't mean they're possessed or anything, but it's just there that because they have no respect for human life, they're open to that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brawler, you know the verse that you were looking for about haughtiness?
Yeah.
So it's in Proverbs 6, starting with 17. Haughty eyes, these things the Lord hates. 7 things that he hates. Haughty eyes, lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who declares lies, one who spreads strife among brothers. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, and it goes on to
Okay, interesting.
Huh. So, haughty eyes meaning like pridefulness. So.
Okay.
A look of arrogance. I'm above you, kind of.
Yeah, nobody likes
portrayal.
that.
Ian,
you're right, though, Brawler. Go ahead, Golly, Ardo.
Really quick.
Golly.
I mean, my icon is Golly.
Golly gee who?
Yeah.
Also, your mic sounds a little funny. That's just saying.
You need to get closer.
That's a little better. Yeah, that's better.
Okay. I might have adjusted the volume, but Ian, bouncing off from what you said, you can really tell that the guards, not who's the leader of the guards?
Caiaphas.
Yeah, Caiaphas, the one that was kind of yelling.
Are you talking about the Roman guards, or are you talking about like the temple?
The ones that were the Roman guards. You can tell they were definitely consumed. Pontius Pilate. Thank you. They were definitely influenced and cursed by Satan, the guards, because you can tell they were the only ones really laughing hysterically. When Pontius Pilate got there, he was very upset.
Yeah.
Because I
guess who was that guy? It wasn't Pilate. His name was like Edenitus or something like that. He had an interesting name.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that guy. It's you always kind of have to have a character like that.
An enforcer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but somebody who has, even though they're in a position of military authority, they still have some sense of compassion about them, because, for some of them, you see those other soldiers who are torturing Jesus. Yeah, they've all been in war. They've clearly all been in war, and the war has affected these other soldiers in the worst possible way, where they've basically become consumed with the pleasure of killing and shedding blood, because it makes them feel powerful, makes them feel like they have control. This guy, on the other hand, has learned to appreciate life and to respect life, because he sees how fragile it is. He's seen how easy it is to kill a man. And so when he's seeing just what they're doing to Jesus, it doesn't matter to him that Jesus is whether he's the Messiah or not. He just sees them absolutely enjoying what they're doing to him, and his reaction shows that he's not completely gone to where these guys are. He's like, you were just supposed to beat him, but not scourge him to death. There's a difference. And I'm pretty sure he even feels like this man, I'm pretty sure this is the guy that, even though we don't see it, this is the soldier that when Jesus finally breathes his last breath and you have the earth shaking and everything, he's the soldier that will ultimately say, truly, this man was the Son of God. You just don't see it. But it's like you see him at the end when Jesus breathes his last breath and he takes his
takes his helmet off
as a sign of respect. So that
Good
shows
point, Ian.
That he sees this man did not deserve this. I mean, even Pilate knows Jesus doesn't deserve this, but he's in a position of governmental authority, and Caiaphas blackmails him into crucifying Jesus when he tells him, if you do not crucify this man and punish him, you are no friend to Caesar. So with Pontius Pilate, he's doing it more from a seat of political
Pressure.
Yeah, pressure, but also like trying to cover himself as far as his career with Caesar is, because I mean they kind of delve into this in The Chosen, where you see Pontius Pilate as a more prominent figure throughout the show, and he talks about how he's only the governor of Jerusalem because of previous failures throughout his career. So this is kind of like exile. This is kind of him being governor of Israel is not actually a good look. It's not a compliment. It's basically more of an insult. So this is him just trying to save face with his career. But the soldier on the other hand, you see how powerless he feels. He wants to help Jesus. He wishes he could do something to spare Jesus from this torment, but at the same time he's a soldier and he has to follow the orders that he's been given. So, but you have to have characters in a story like this to show that there are people who care, and the whole world.
Yeah, not everybody's so wicked. You know, they have like some level of humanity. Yeah, exactly. I agree. It's funny you're talking about all that. That's so far ahead. We're not anywhere close to that yet.
I went
but it's all right. Just come on, chapter by chapter, people. I appreciate the passion though. That's good. That's good.
I know.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Real quick before we move on to the next chapter, I want to talk about what I think to be probably the most interesting segment in this chapter was Judas's, death to himself when he goes out into the desert and he's chased by those children. When I saw this, for the first time Sunday, I definitely didn't expect those kids that were like messing with him outside of the high priest's house. I did not expect them to be, some sort of demon children, hybrid children. I didn't think that was going to happen. So I was really surprised. And especially when we got to a point where there was so many of them that surfaced and they all chase him into a deep part of the desert. And then we get that strange image with the rotting mule. And of course, at that point, I think there's like a piece of rope that's on the mule and he takes that to hang himself. What did you guys take away from this scene and choice of direction for like the devil and evil's representation through the children?
I never thought that the kids were actually demons or anything like that. I think those kids, I think it was in his mind more so. The devil was playing with his mind, and so basically it was kind of an image projected in his mind.
But they were biting him, they were screwing him up.
Yeah, but that's like, kids back then even, it's not hard to believe that kids back then, depending on how they were raised, of course, would mock somebody who was, on the street, who looked like they maybe were diseased or demented or something like that. It's not hard to think that kids could be that cruel even back then.
That's crazy. I never would have. How the hell? There's no way those were normal kids chasing him into the desert. Well, they all disappeared too. So there's no way they weren't. They were definitely.
I could be wrong.
No way. They're definitely not. Come on. They had to be.
Does anyone remember when the children made fun of Elisha and then the bear came out and killed them?
I'm on Leviticus
Just
right
saying,
now, so I'm not there yet.
It happens. So,
what do you think?
Calling him old Baldy.
What was the question?
They were insulting him.
We were talking about what did you think of the strange depiction of like evil through the children chasing Judas out into the desert? Like, what was that whole situation? It was such a strange sequence to lead up to his death.
It's one of those things, like I said before, where it's just not explained. And I feel like that's why you have to go to the scriptures and really think about it so much more, because it was just like, hey, here he is being chased by all these kids and, oh, they're gone now. So is it just the devil playing tricks in his head still? Is he having a breakdown? Is any of this actually happening? And as soon as it might have been, yeah. But as soon as he saw that rope, there was just zero hesitation. It's like, okay, well, it's time to go.
I don't know why they were children, but I do believe I agree with you guys that it was Satan in his head driving him to his death, trying to add more guilt and what were we saying?
I was gonna say, I think it's worse that it's actually children and not just grown men. It's like,
Yeah.
you think of children be so pure and everything. It's like, oh, they're chasing this guy down, they're trying to beat him up, they're mocking him the whole time. I think it's like
It was
scarier than
definitely
kids.
the devil's influence, because we see the same ugly face baby on, with the devil, right? I mean, it's the same kind of face we see on the children, or at least like one or two of the kids.
Yeah.
So
The devil comes in sheep's clothing
yeah.
as innocence.
Oh, is that why it was a sheep at the end where Judas hung himself on? Like the rope was on the sheep?
It was a mule or a
Oh,
donkey.
never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
But that-
obviously
I mean,
That
not
would
a
have been
sheep.
interesting.
It would have been interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
But
I
these
was
are
wondering
creative
why the
liberties
mule-
that Gibson took, and that's
Yeah.
fine. Like I know some people that are very strict about the portrayal of all this, and I even knowing that it's not in the scriptures, it's okay. I'm as long as I think at the very least it'll make or inspire people to want to read what actually happened, and they'll see like this didn't happen, this isn't in the scriptures, etc. But that's fine. It's still a movie at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And plus, it goes back, that Satan is the great accuser. That whole without even saying anything, any dialogue, you see all that torture that he's going through with those kids chasing him, taunting him, and then of course the devil shows up in brief shots. That is Satan basically telling him, you are diseased, you are damaged goods, the worst kind of damaged goods. So just, the only way out of this is to end it, end yourself. And, here you are.
Kyle, I liked that you brought up, there's some hope. It is sad what he did. I felt the same way, that he could have turned, and he was sad. He was sad about what he did.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be different. And,
Because
Satan
had left him at that point
too. I mean,
Yeah.
Peter denied him 3 times in a time of desperate need, even though it was meant to be that way. But he came back. That was a good point. And it's a shame, who knows where Judas's character could have went from there if he had turned and embraced Jesus and embraced his message and spread the gospel, right? Just like, Saul, these guys all have an interesting story. Could have made for something, the world would probably be totally different if that happened, right? I mean, it's weird to think like if one thing moves, everything could possibly change.
So I hope you don't mind a personal spiritual note, but we all do bad things here and there, and we haven't denied Christ or turned him over to the authorities, but we have all done things we're ashamed of, and God is ready to accept us, forgive us and accept us back into his fold. So I don't know. I can sort of relate to Judas, and I'm glad that God's had mercy on me so that when I do fall, he helps get me back up on my feet.
For all have fallen short of the glory of God. I mean, it's human nature, unfortunately. But yeah, Jesus is always ready to receive us, and we just got to make that choice individually. He can't make it for us.
Yeah.
Our family, our churches, our pastors, reverends can't make it for us. We have to, that's why we have free will. We have to choose him freely for ourselves.
Amen to that. Here, let's move on to the next part here. So in this chapter, we're in the morning after that terrible night trial. Well, not even night trial, the night indictment by the high priests. Jesus is taken to Pontius Pilate for the first time, who questions him about being the king of the Jews. Pilate, he finds no fault, but, under the pressure from the crowd and chief priests, he sends him to King Herod for judgment. He doesn't want anything to do with him. He doesn't see there being a problem here. And once Jesus goes over there, Herod is drunken and he mocks Jesus, and he returns him back to Pilate without judgment. He wants Pilate to take care of this issue. And, Pilate, he kind of I think he tries to please the crowd a little bit by, offering the release of somebody else, giving them the choice. He offers to release Jesus or the criminal Barabbas, who is a notorious murderer. I was glad they said that language, a notorious murderer. And you saw him. I mean, he was literally an animal out there, and it's kind of funny after he gets released, nobody wants anything to do with him. Right. I mean, it's so fake that they, of course, they release Barabbas, even though they probably don't even want him in their society, right? But that's what they choose to do. They choose Barabbas, and they demand crucifixion. And Pilate's wife, Claudia, she's kind of in the background. She urges him to release Jesus after she has a terrible dream. But here we are. I think this is just a small chapter. I think it's going to heat up a lot after this one. But I wanted to talk about King Herod and his strange encounter we have with him. He has this like drunken erotic gathering, and I think it's like it shows us a different display of evil, right? And I'm kind of wondering how you guys perceive this evil to be, and maybe how it is different compared to the other versions we see just in this brief encounter.
Before that, can I just bring up, does anyone know the story of the Barabbas actor when they were filming this? Okay,
Yes.
I didn't know who was going to bring it up
Why don't you
first.
share it? Why don't you share it?
So from what I read about it, that the actor, during the scene where he's laughing at Jesus, he does like a double take. And he says in that moment that he saw the real face of Jesus and was baptized after the filming of the movie.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what you could definitely see. Like he looks over, smiles, and then looks over again, just stares for just like a brief second. And when you watch it after knowing that, it's like, oh, that's when it happened. So I always thought that was an incredible, like, fun fact about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good. I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm going to be the naysayer about this. I think that's hyperbole and a little bit of a breaking of the first commandment. So,
well, I think it's more like,
As you take
you're looking at a great portrayal of Jesus, and you're in.
Is there a commandment about drinking?
Well, I see he looked at his face and saw the face of God. So sometimes we need to see that representation.
I believe Christ turned water into wine.
Oh, I hit a sensitive nerve here. I'm sorry.
Well, I actually had a wedding.
Drunkenness.
My in-laws are Baptist,
so
I've had these encounters before, and I actually made a speech at my wedding about drinking and gave the example to bring peace to the wedding environment, that to remind them that Christ turned water into wine.
You changed it into grape juice. Come on now.
I've heard that too. Growing up, my mom believed that as well. I don't think that's the case because
I'm messing with you.
Yeah.
So what did you guys? Did you guys notice anything different about the party, the Herod party, that was a different portrayal of evil?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have the evil that's kind of built on self-righteousness, and then the evil that's built on excess. Excess wine, food, right? Gluttony, sex, whatever it was that they were into. Yeah.
Also apathy as well, because you got to remember that Herod is only a king in name. He's just basically a puppet king for the Romans. It's a performance. He doesn't really have any real influence over anything. Other than what the Romans have given him. So he's just sitting up there in his palace. He's probably heard about Jesus and knows about what's going on, but he doesn't really care because he's just living it up in the lap of luxury up there. He's a rich playboy, billionaire, and everything like that. He's living an easy life because the Romans have given it to him. He's like, hey, as long as all I care about is being in good with the Romans and they'll give me what I want. And then he sees Jesus. He just sees, like, what are you wasting my time for with this nobody? And then of course he tries to egg him on with saying, like, are you really the one that was foretold? What about me? Am I not a king? And he's just trying to push Jesus's buttons. Of course, Jesus just completely ignores it, doesn't even look him in the eye, because Jesus knows, you think that I'm a waste of your time. I can see into your heart and in your spirit. I want to reach you, but I can see that you're in a place where you don't want to be reached. So,
he's totally blocked off.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm not even going to waste my time with you. So,
well, this is like, I think this sequence here, it's like, I think it's the only example we see of like laziness, right? And like you said, Gen X, man, the gluttony, and it's so brief, but it's potent. It's a potent image of a totally different side of sin, right? And all these guys, they are drunken, and even though they are they're probably all pretty evil anyway. The drunkenness might add to that too. I mean, the fact that none of them really had a problem or stood up to maybe consider what was actually going on here, that had to have been led by their lifestyle and what they're doing. And, when you lead by that, you lead by those principles, you're going to make the wrong decisions. Being the under influence of anything doesn't make anyone more clear-minded. It doesn't send anyone to do better things. They're making bad decisions. And that might also just come down to the character. But I mean, the gluttonous factor and drinking and food, whatever it is, it's all definitely playing a role in this.
That was the one person or group that Jesus had nothing to say to.
Yeah, good point. He was not trying to convince anybody there. Huh. Well, let's move on to the next part. Not the next chapter, but I want to talk about Pontius Pilate. Because, he has an interesting tale in this, right? We see a lot of the back end of his decision making, and we see the pressure that's on his shoulders and the internal conflict. What did you guys find interesting about his internal conflict with dealing with Jesus during this time?
I liked how confused he was about everything. That he didn't really want to crucify him. He didn't want Jesus dead. Every time they just keep shouting, it was like, do you guys seriously want me to kill this dude over what? So it's like how he really didn't fully understand everything that was going on, but just had to go with it because of political pressure and like, oh, you're going to betray Caesar. Yeah. So he had, I like where he just washes his hands of. It's like, oh, well, it's one man's life. It doesn't really mean that much in the end to him.
Right. I was going to say the same thing, World War Joe. I was going to say that he was basically letting everyone else vote for him.
Yeah.
But he's a real, I like how multidimensional he was. Like, he wasn't just there to just throw anybody over to the crucifiers or whatever. I mean, he was there to try to give them a fair hearing. And he was, ruled by these competing norms or values that he had. One, to kind of be impartial and assess the facts for what they are, but then he had to approve his master, who was Caesar, and these guys sort of threatened him, right? If you don't crucify this guy, then you're not in league with Caesar, and he's going to come down on you. So he's a very human character, and in the story, in the written word too, I think the movie really portrayed well what you find in the writing.
I also like that exchange, how they do the exchange between him and Jesus, and like it starts off with Pontius Pilate speaking to him in Aramaic, but then Jesus starts speaking to him. I think it's supposed to be Latin.
I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah. They say how in the bonus features for the film is like first thing Pontius Pilate says to him, are you really the king of the Jews? And he says it in Aramaic because that was the common language at that time in Israel. That's why they decided to go with it for this film. But then Jesus starts speaking in his language to show him, I'm not just this uneducated carpenter's son. You don't have to try and pander to me. But he still shows him there's a lot more to me than you think. Yeah, you're asking me that question just because you're trying to find evidence of whether or not I'm really a threat to Rome, like the priests say I am. But I'm showing you, no, I'm not a threat, but I'm not ignorant either.
Yeah. I think you said it well, Gen man. He's multidimensional, right? And you can't exactly put him in one box or not. And I feel like it'd be easy to like paint him as like the evil character, right? And obviously he makes a terrible decision, but it wasn't really like that wasn't a decision made out of malice. And it's strange, you're watching the movie and they're setting up for like an uprising, and they say it themselves that there's going to be a rebellion at hand if you don't give them what they want. And that's a strange amount of pressure. Obviously he doesn't see anything wrong with Jesus, but at the same time, I mean, if he lets him live and he doesn't do what the chief priests want him to do, that man, Jerusalem could be in ruins from the uprising. It's definitely a strange situation there. It'd be interesting if we saw what would have happened if he didn't, order him to be crucified, and to see what the chief priests and all of them would do out of their dissatisfaction. One of my favorite moments in the movie, and this is when we could finally say something happy, is I love, obviously some of these flashbacks are really incredible. I think my favorite flashback is where we see Jesus as a passionate carpenter, right? Same as Joseph. And it's so brief. This movie's so heavy, and we finally get a moment to breathe and spend some time with our friend Jesus, who is a person. He's a friendly family man. He loves his mom. He loves God. And he's a man here. You know what I mean? He's a man with talent. He knows how to, make things, make tables and chairs, and make them himself. And he has, I wouldn't exactly say pride, but he's, proud of the work he makes, and he makes high quality stuff. And these are all qualities of, any of us. We all have a talent, right? And we all have an interest, something we're good at that we pursue, a passion. And I think this was just a nice moment to take a quick breather. And I think it added a lot to seeing the humanity of Jesus. What did you guys think of this moment? If we want to just quickly mention it before we move on.
It might be my favorite part of the movie. This shows that Christ had a sense of humor and may have been the most joyful human being that ever lived. And most of all, it hits me hard because of the mother-son interaction there. As one who's lost his mom, it hits me every time, and especially when she runs to him when he's carrying the cross, and we have these subtle flashbacks of her remembering when he fell down as a child and she ran to go get him. That love and dynamic right there that they're showing is it's beautiful, but it's minimal at the same time. And when she reaches him and he tells her, "See, mother, I make all things new," is just,
gosh,
get out of here. This is that's just
those two are
just
equal.
gorgeous. Yeah.
I was going to volunteer this later, but I got to say I cried at that moment.
Yeah. Here's the thing about this time watching it. So watching the scourging sequence still gives me anxiety. It makes me uncomfortable. But I didn't cry the way that I did the first few times that I've seen it, and I've seen it about 5 times or so. But those sequences, even just here, but that's a personal reason. When he's having this joyous moment, a family moment between his mom, that hits me still. And also the moment when she reaches him when he's carrying the cross.
That one hits. That's a great moment. We're going to talk about that later because, that one stood out to me too. I think we could have used a few more moments like this. I know it's special because it's the one time he's really happy, but this movie is so heavy. I remember I watched this, like I said, I watched this Sunday night, and it kind of ruined my Monday. I mean, it just kind of carries with you, and I'm curious to see how we feel tomorrow. And, ruin not like because it's bad or anything, just because it's such heavy material, and it's unlike any movie you'll ever see. There's nothing that can really impact you like this, right? And I think Sound of Freedom was also a very heavy film that hit kind of in the same zone, not nearly as heavy, but it's this is not a breeze at all. And you get a little moment here to breathe and smile, and that's important.
Yeah, you really needed it in that moment in this film. And the fact that it's happening right before he goes into the trial at night, it's like just that one little lighthearted moment just before things are about to get serious, because you kind of, I get what you're saying, Brawler. We could have probably used maybe 1 or 2 more scenes like that throughout the film, But I definitely think that, what Mel was trying to do is like, make sure people focus on all the trials, the as much of what Jesus went through for us as possible. That's something when you go into it, you need to stay as focused on it as possible to really understand. As hard as it is to watch, because it's supposed to be hard to watch. Otherwise,
yeah, you lose sight of what was supposed to be said. I see our friend is here. This will brighten our spirits. Our friend Boaca is back. Boaca 462. Where have you been, Boaca? We love you, Boaca. We missed you. You've been gone for far too long. Welcome back. He says, sorry I'm late. I was deployed to the Middle East when this came out. Our chaplain got a copy of this to show us. Wasn't a dry eye in the tent, even the non-religious. Wow. That's a way to watch it, isn't it? Huh. Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed the movie. It's good to see you again, Boaca. It's been a while. I see we have a couple other new people here. I think you're talking about King Herod here. Yelg7. What's up, Yelg? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. He says he's got some influence, built a whole lot of things, didn't he? Oh, yeah. I just meant like under the influence, not influence. Oh, wait. No, you weren't talking about me. We were talking about how King Herod, he was more of a puppet. So interesting. I don't know. I don't know the history of him too well. And
this is not the Herod. It's not the Herod that tried to kill Jesus as a child.
Okay, it's a different Herod.
I thought that too,
I was wondering.
And I had a discussion and was informed that this is the Herod that killed John the Baptist, but that's not the same Herod as the one who tried to kill him as a child.
Oh, I guess that makes sense. He didn't look that old here.
Right.
Yeah, he was younger. Good catch. I was thinking the same thing. Ando Commando. What's up, Ando? This movie hits me harder the older I get. Aw, man. It's good stuff, Ando. Let us know your thoughts. He says, I watch it every Easter, saw it in theaters when I was 13. I wonder if they'll re-release this in theaters. That would be pretty incredible. I'm wondering if if the Resurrection will be in IMAX. That would be interesting.
Well, I don't think they shot it in IMAX. I don't know why people get excited about that stuff.
I love IMAX.
You show it in IMAX. They didn't shoot it in IMAX. Why go see it then?
What? Why see it in IMAX?
Correct.
Oh, I like big.
It's a bigger screen.
Big picture, yes.
For me, it's not enough. You actually have to shoot it in IMAX.
Well, you know what? I mean, the transfers are not that great when it's not shot in IMAX. When I saw,
I won't argue with you on that.
When I saw the stupid Predator movie in IMAX, it was hideous. It was blurry. The whole movie was blurry. I couldn't believe it. It was bad. But I also saw, The Shining in IMAX and Jaws in IMAX, but they were restored and they looked great.
There you go.
But yeah.
I just don't think the ticket justifies going to see them in that. I do think when the Resurrection comes out, I get a sense that when it does, they will have The Passion come out right before it, back in the theaters.
Yeah, that'll be good. Well, I'll have to check that out. Boaca says, oh, he's been okay, just had life going on, but getting better. Good, Boaca. Welcome back. It's good to have you on. I remember when you started with us at either Saving Private Ryan or Full Metal Jacket. It was one of those two. So welcome back. Good to see you. Our friend Proctfile says, Sound of Freedom was a really rough watch that still hasn't left me. I live in a major city, so there are some hard truths I just have to be aware of at all times. Yeah, man. Gosh, you don't know what's going on anywhere.
That opening scene is terrifying for me.
What's brilliant about that movie is that it actually isn't graphic, and yet it still hits you in a way that feels like it's graphic.
Which makes it more effective.
Yeah. That's a good one. I'm glad it was successful. And my gosh, Jim Caviezel was so good in that. He was awesome. And the other guy, he was like the ex like mob boss kind of dude. He did a great job. I don't know that actor, but he was equally awesome. He also said, Boaca has some thoughts. The Sound of Freedom is an unfortunate and a haunting necessity to keep the topic in the spotlight. Yeah, I mean, look, now people aren't really talking about it anymore. It's been a little while since the movie's been out. It's a real shame. Boaca says, never seen a film in IMAX. Couldn't justify the expense. Man, you got to go for something. See Project Hail Mary in IMAX. That's, some of these movies you got to see in IMAX.
Did they shoot it in IMAX? Is my question.
I believe they did. I believe they shot in IMAX.
They shot The Dark Knight in IMAX, and damn, did I go see it, and it was the best experience for IMAX for me.
Are you serious?
That I saw it in an IMAX? Yes. Yeah. In Lincolnshire 20 in Illinois, in Lincolnshire, I saw it, and it was amazing.
Oh, okay. So you're saying a nice thing about it. That's good.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was the best IMAX experience I'd ever had. Yeah.
Well, all right, cool. Thanks, Boca. I just have I think two more questions real quickly about this chapter before we move on to the next one. I thought I got through it all, but I haven't. I thought it was interesting. I might be mixing this up with a little later because we see Jesus come before Pilate a few times. But whatever it is, Jesus at this point, he's brought forth to Pilate. And of course, the chief priests and all the people in the crowd, they're using slander against him, right? And while all this is happening, people are just saying lies and lies and lies, and Jesus isn't saying anything. And he looks up and he sees a dove flying above gracefully. What did you guys think that represented? Do you think it was like that was supposed to be like an embodiment of the Holy Spirit, or was it sort of like just a sign that God was there for Jesus? The dove was kind of pointed funny too. It looked like, I don't know where it was pointed, but it looked a little unorthodox the way it was flying. Was there anything deep to this?
Well, what was the setting? I remember the bird, but I don't remember what was going on.
It was during one of these moments where Jesus was standing in front of the Sanhedrin.
Okay.
In Pilate's presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a reference to that moment where Jesus is baptized by John the Baptist, and the dove falls down on his head while and you hear the voice of God saying, "This is my son with whom I am pleased." I think it was just I think it was, who said it, that it was a sign that God was with him, or that.
Yeah, that was me.
I think. Okay, yeah, I think that's basically what it was. That to the message to the human part of Jesus that was afraid of all the agony he was going to have to endure. That the God part of him was saying, "We're going to get through this. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be painful, but we're gonna win in the end." And I'm saying that as they're both one and the same. They're not two separate deities or anything. Because Jesus did say, "I and the Father are one." Let's always remember, there is the human side, but all in all, Jesus is still God in flesh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Ian, I don't think you're going to be able to explain how that works, and I won't even begin to explain how that works either.
That'll tell you
Trinity. Only God will explain to
yeah,
us
exactly. The closest that I've heard of something that would make sense to me is the different forms that water takes: vapor, solid, and liquid.
That's a weird comparison, but I guess that's as good as it gets, right? Hey, yeah, I hear you. Just real quickly, I thought maybe we'd talk about this because, one of the most shameful moments in human history is, the gathered betrayal against Jesus when the opportunity to save him presents itself, right? Pilate, he gave people the option to, either take this disgusting monster Barabbas, who's a notorious murderer, or you can have Jesus to be released. And they all choose Barabbas with open arms. What stood out to you during this experience? It's not that long, but I think it deserves to be talked about just a little bit. Did anything stick out to you guys about this that was particularly frustrating or interesting?
About his performance?
Well, no, about the sequence. When Barabbas, you see Barabbas, and he's like he's like an animal, really. He can't he can't keep his mouth shut. He's gurgling, he's laughing, he's flamboyant, flailing his arms, sticking his tongue out.
So basically, like every hobo in the city of Boston. Got it. Yeah.
I think Luke's trying to say something, but he's muted himself.
Oh, Luke.
Yeah, I put it in the chat though.
Oh,
He-
you
he was
unmute
trying to say
yourself?
something.
Oh, I just muted him again.
But you're the one that
muted me?
muted him.
I
You
heard
muted
a
me this
bottle.
whole
Somebody
time?
was
Yeah,
flicking
Luke,
a
he doesn't
bottle
want you to
during
I don't
the
have a
stream,
bottle.
and I was muting someone. I think it was World War Joe because I muted him.
Yeah,
and
you
then I
muted
didn't
me.
hear the
What am I
bottle.
doing?
Jackson,
You were
I've been
flicking
trying
a
to talk
bottle.
for the
I
last
don't have
20
a bottle.
minutes.
It's
You're flicking your
Kyle.
mic. You're playing with your microphone.
I thought it was Kyle with his bottle.
I was
Well,
wondering why I was
somebody's
being
playing with a
ignored.
bottle.
I don't have a
microphone,
bottle. I
and
have
I'm
a
muting
glass.
you
That's
if
it.
you
You have a
that.
can, don't
You're
you?
playing with your glass again, Kyle.
Okay, well,
So-
that's why I was
Enough
ignored
with
for
your
20 minutes.
euphemisms.
All
Yeah.
right, what
Wow,
were you gonna say,
okay.
Luke?
Thanks, Jackson. All right. So
I heard the subtext behind that.
yeah,
That's
okay.
good.
Yeah. I had so many things I had to say earlier, but I don't think I got it. Everyone was just talking over me. Okay. So this scene was so frustrating. It hurt my soul just seeing this guy get away. This horrible man getting away for a notorious murder, just because everyone's mind was already made up because of what all of the King Herod, the Pontius Pilate were saying. Everyone was already biased just because they thought this man is horrible. And that they just let that guy walk away as an innocent man also, while he was, just getting in people's face. Whose face did he get in? And he was like laughing all.
Oh yeah, one of the guards or whatever.
Yeah, the captain.
And then who's to say that guy didn't, continue murdering? So.
Oh yeah, a notorious murderer.
Yeah.
You don't want him
Like,
on the streets.
Yeah, injustice.
But
right
you know
there.
what? I mean, it looked like he did have a redeeming moment when he looked at Jesus, though. That's something so special. I mean, look at this picture. What we see here. He had this incredible gaze, right? Just the one eye. Most of the movie we see him just with the one eye, and it's like almost. It's so strange how Mel Gibson was able to capture this like this wondrous, like out of this world look of love and acceptance and respect just from that one eye. And I think the scene earlier on with the bridge, when he flails off the bridge, you literally see his eye glow, and maybe for whatever reason that kind of sets you up to believe that there is almost like a magical component to who this person is, because obviously he's the Son of God. He is God made man. But that's something that Caviezel does so convincingly. It's just a simple gaze, and you see that affect all of these characters when they come to him, but not all of them do, right? I mean, he has moments where he looks at these evil guards and whatever else, and it doesn't change them. It doesn't affect everyone, but I think it affects people that have open hearts, right? And that haven't been maybe subdued to the devil, or haven't been haven't closed their hearts off like a lot of people can do when they don't believe in something. So definitely a special moment. I liked that it was brief with Barabbas, where we get a moment for him to silently reflect in a split second and almost have a change of faith, as the actor did, and maybe he goes on to be a different character later on. That's something I don't think we know about that with his character.
Well, there was actually a film done back in the 50s or 60s about Barabbas. He's played by Anthony Quinn, and you see him after the crucifixion, and he.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't remember all the details, but I know he becomes a Christian by the end. So that was like an idyllic take on it. And what's interesting about that film is
you sound like an alien.
I do. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Your sound is glitching a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Did you hear the part where I said
you sound good now?
That's better.
Okay. Well, there's the way how they shot the crucifixion in that scene. They actually shot it during a solar eclipse, so you actually see the solar eclipse in the scene where it takes place. But yeah, Anthony Quinn, great actor, plays him, and I only saw it once. I'd have to watch it again, but I do remember he becomes a Christian at the end.
Okay. Huh. Sounds interesting. I might have to check that one out. Well, let's move on to the next chapter here. Let's see. We are about to go into some deep waters. Oh gosh, yeah, we're about to get to the real serious scene here. Let me try to find a good picture. It's sad. So obviously, with Passion of the Christ, it is a very graphic film, right? I think this is the most graphic movie I've ever seen. The only other movie that came to mind was Primate. And these are totally different. That is reckless, useless gore. I know it's stupid, but that's the only other movie that came to mind as of recent time. This is infinitely better than that garbage.
You never seen a Saw movie?
No, I haven't. I don't plan to watch those.
The first one's worth seeing.
Okay.
Yeah, just see the first one.
All right. Well, you bring that up in this.
It's not as bad as
really gory, so I don't know.
It kind of is, but it's not as bad as the rest of them.
Okay.
The first one is more of a thriller, like mystery-based movie story, and it's not so focused on the traps. The later ones get worse and worse, but the first one, it's its own thing.
Best viewed in IMAX?
That's up to him. I'm not going to see it. They didn't shoot it in IMAX.
Definitely not seeing that in IMAX.
They're probably too cheap for that.
I'm only bringing all this up because YouTube, if you show images of something graphic, it will, I don't know, it would do something wrong with the stream. It would probably make me want to cut it out, and it would screw up the whole thing. So unfortunately, we can't show, the more realistic images of what they, what appeared in the film, because
you can't show a screenshot of it.
I don't think so. I think it would flag me.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not taking the chance either. But I mean, you can try on your stream at some point, but
I'm not doing a stream, but this weekend I'm releasing a fireside chat talking about this movie.
Oh, that's good.
With a 30-year pastor, and
nice.
I'm showing it all basically.
All right. I hope it works.
Yeah, me too.
Wrong. Yeah. But so at this point, the crowd, they just continue to erupt with disapproval, and Pilate orders Jesus to be scourged, and not killed, but to be scourged, kind of send a message. And hopefully he did that to just kind of quench the bloodthirst of all these bloodthirsty people. And this is just an awful scene. We follow a very extensive, brutal flagellation scene at the pillar. And it exhibits just utter raw hatred and evil from these Roman torturers as they brutally whip Jesus. And for the first part of it, it's bad enough when it's not. I mean, it's graphic, but it's not terribly graphic, where they're using just typical whips. And then eventually he falls to his knees in pain. But he defies pain and humanity itself by raising up. He has the strength that you can't even believe that any human could possibly have, because obviously he's, God made man. And he stands up to further endure his passion as he bears the sins of all people. And, the evil Romans here, they are now more bloodthirsty than ever. And they begin to deploy this brutal metal clawed whip. And from this point on, we see just something terribly awful. For a long time, we get another extensive beating of, Jesus's flesh and bone coming out. And it's already bad enough from what you're seeing and you're hearing, and you're seeing him flail in pain and his arm shaking. It's terrible. And it's even awful just talking about it. And you think that it's, it'll end sometime soon, because we veer away and we follow, Mary Magdalene and Mary, mother of Jesus, and John at the side. They're a little ways away. They're hearing all the action. And while we're spending time with them, we spend a good maybe 3 to 5 minutes with them, and we can continue to hear the beating. It does not stop. And Claudia reaches out to them and hands them some cloths to, eventually wipe up Jesus's blood with. And Jesus, if it weren't for this one guard coming out or I don't know, I think it was like the Roman captain, if it wasn't for him riding down there to stop them, they probably would have beat him to death. And, this is probably, for me, it is definitely the most intense, horrible scene in the entire movie. This is like the introduction to how graphic Mel Gibson's willing to go with portraying this. And man, it'll scare you straight. So I'm kind of wondering what you guys think. How do you think the graphic nature helped conveys the physical cost of the passion? And why do you think that Mel Gibson emphasized it so heavily?
Because his lack of, emotion during this whole scene. He was showing some sort of pain, but, he wasn't screaming or trying to fight it. He was just taking it and proving his love and his forgiveness for everybody.
It builds up, dude. There are moments, especially when the flagrum embeds into his rib cage.
Oh yeah,
he does
scream, yeah.
He screams out. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
So, I think Mel Gibson doing this really puts a lesson onto a lot of the iterations that portrayed Christ going through this stuff. And I grew up with more family friendly versions, and that do a disservice actually to Christ and what he went through. You know, when you have there's a claymation version that I mentioned before that Ray Fiennes actually, he was the voice of.
Oh, weird.
Of Christ, yeah. And
I've seen that one.
Yeah. But
is that any good?
Yeah, for a kid to watch.
Okay.
But that's not for an adult can appreciate some of it and actually has some good moments, but in terms of the suffering that he went through, there isn't another movie that does this in this way, respectfully.
Yeah.
You know, and it is respectful to portray it as close as how it was.
I think like part of seeing how brutal it is, it adds a whole new level of understanding. And, when I watched it Sunday, it scared me straight. And it reminded me that, we got to be faithful. We got to be faithful because, any garbage we have going on in our life, no matter what it is, he suffered greatly so we can vault past that, so we could get beyond our mistakes so that our sins could be forgiven. And no matter what trials we get, it's never going to be anything like that. So that definitely put me in perspective, realizing that, my problems aren't big problems. We don't really know how bad it is. And, back then, especially for all these disciples, once Jesus, died and rose again, they all had pretty horrific deaths. And, we're going to be seeing that in the resurrection. Like a lot of people have gotten it way worse than us. So this was definitely a good moment to remind yourself of that.
Yeah, we think that we've seen the worst of it. I imagine seeing sporadic scenes throughout the resurrection, the sequel, of the disciples being tortured to death. And Mel Gibson is not going to be afraid to do that.
Was there any problem
that the movie Resurrection could top this even?
But was there any problems with the theaters, with the brutality that was being shown? Did they have any pushback whatsoever? Because, like you said, it is probably one of the most graphic things. And I've seen Saw, and this thing is probably way worse. It just feels so much more real than a lot of these things. So I do wonder if there were any problems with the theaters wanting to show this or not.
I wonder if part of it is because it feels more graphic because it's in the daylight too, right? It's the center focus. It's exactly what's happening right now. All eyes on this moment.
When you put it into that context, yes, and how prolonged it is, the flagellation sequence it's around 5 to 10 minutes.
Wow. So
that's intense. And he gets whipped somewhere between 50 and 100 times. The quick research that I did was that the Hebrews would whip around 30 times, but the Romans didn't have a limit. So we don't know exactly how many times Christ was stricken, but we do know that it was probably worse than this. Yeah.
Beyond this what happened to him being scourged, if like anybody had to go through this, I don't think you'd survive much longer. There's no medicine back then. I don't know how you'd wrap any of these wounds, especially they have all these terrible tools at their disposal. That's practically killing somebody doing something like that to them.
There was something else going on with Christ. Obviously, I think the reason why he was able to go through all this is because of who he was. And it says in the Bible that no bones were broken in him, which is unbelievable. Wow. Okay. Unbelievable to think that after all of that, and carrying of the cross, etc., that no bones were broken. So there's something anatomically going on with the way that he grew up and who he was. Obviously, being a carpenter, you're going to be hauling stuff and lumber, etc. So, but I think there's an element of supernatural aspect to it as well.
Yeah, because he says
it's incredible.
Yeah, because he says how like no one takes my life from me; I give it up myself. So it's like when he dies at the end, he says it is finished. When he says that, that's when he's like, it's done. Now I've done what I came here to do. My life, I give it up now. So it's like, yeah, there is a supernatural element to help him get through this. And the other thing I take away from it is that literally the God of the universe, the God who created the universe, chose to go through this punishment for all of us. Because you had the blood sacrifice in the Old Testament, where they would bring the best of their animals to
their
the
livestock,
temple. Their livestock to be sacrificed as a blood covering for their sins, which goes back to the angel of death in Egypt, when they took the lamb's blood, painted it over their door as a protection, but it's like you had to have something pure, no injuries, no disease, and also the firstborn of your livestock, and it was you trusting God with your best and your first, as a means of washing away your sins of that year. So now you have God himself being the ultimate blood sacrifice for all of us for all time, and doing that, going through all that pain for us. It's like you said, Brawler, it's a reminder about how, as hard as it is, because we live in a broken world and we're all flawed and human, we have to dedicate ourselves every day. It's not just Sunday, it's not just when we go to church, it's every day in our personal lives to make that decision to have a close relationship with God.
Church doesn't happen at church, it happens
Correct.
in your personal space.
Yeah, because the church isn't a building, it's the people. The reason why you go there is to connect with other people, to stay connected, and because the Bible says where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he is there amongst them.
My veteran friend Chris, he likes to use the word fellowship. It's just come and fellowship and all that.
Nice.
Fellowship.
Why do you think, like, during this moment, what's like inspiring is when Jesus, obviously there's 2 parts of the scourging. There's the first part where they use the lighter whips. I mean, they're normal whips that are doing awful damage. And then he decides that he wants more. Why do you think, what was this supposed to show us when Jesus rose out of defiance to receive more of the scourging?
Wait, how do you know he wanted more?
Because he stood up. Because I mean, remember the first part, he they stop, like they're whipping him for a while, and then he like kneels down, and then that's it. Then they stop, and then
I think you're referring to the prior to the flagrum. They're hitting him with these rods.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I don't think it was that him wanting more, but him accepting what he knew was coming next. It was like,
you didn't think that was the end of it.
What if I forget that dude's name. The guy who came in later on, like way out, like 200 hits in, who told them to stop. I wonder why he didn't come earlier. Because
he probably didn't think about it. He probably wasn't thinking they were going to be doing anything crazy.
Yeah.
They probably took too long, and he's like, well, I better check on them. And then he saw that they were still going.
Like, you guys are still doing this?
I thought when they were hitting him with the rods, I thought that was like, and they stopped. I mean, they literally stopped doing it once they like hit a point where they weren't doing it anymore. And then he's there, and I don't know if he says something, but he rises up to accept more. And it looks like it's almost, he's making that choice to take on more pain.
Yeah, I think it's like they stop just to kind of like they're very twisted. So in a way, they think of it as like almost like an art form or something. So they're kind of stopping to kind of just gawk at it and be like, "Oh, you can't stand up now?" That kind of thing. But then when they see him stand up, you see the look on their faces when he's rising up, and they're like, "Man, wow." Usually this takes most of it out of them. They don't even want to go to the next part. But this guy's definitely making us work for our living here, because that is basically their job, is to torture.
It's awful. At least they didn't use like the nail the baseball bat with the nails on it.
Essentially, yeah.
Really quick, what Kyle was saying earlier, I heard something. One of my friends was mentioning that in the Bible, at least not in the movie, I don't think in the movie, they heard that a man can only take so many, so many hits, so many whips, and they intentionally hit him just one number short that goal.
Oh wow!
Just to bring him just this close to death. I'm not sure if that's true. I'll have to look it up, but that's what I heard.
Well, what was terrible about that sequence was like, they weren't just going at the body. You saw they were attacking his legs too, and his waist and his body. Gosh, it was bad enough when it was his back, and then he flips over. I couldn't believe it when that happened. When they flipped him over and they were striking his stomach, I couldn't believe that. That was insane.
Yeah.
Gosh, real quick. First off, just quickly, everybody answer: was this the hardest scene in the film for you guys to watch, or did something more?
Yeah. Yes, because of how naked it is. With there's no music, and all the sound design that you hear are the swings of the instruments, the torture instruments, and the hits on the body, and the grunts, and just you're witnessing torture happen, and it's probably the most intense thing that you'll watch because of the way that it's portrayed, and also the context as well. It's done to portray reality. Movies like Saw they're heightened, and they have a degree of theatricality to them. Yeah. This is not that.
No.
Mm-hmm.
They're very overblown, cartoonish gore.
Sometimes
close-ups and dramatic scores. With this was like Brawler said, it was in the daylight. It wasn't cinematic at all. It was just felt real.
Well, real quickly, I don't want to talk about this too much, but I thought that during this horrifying sequence, I think that like the Mary Mother of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, I thought they added an interesting value to this to everything that was going on here. What did you guys think that was?
I agree with that. There's nothing scriptural about them being there, though. It's not in the scriptures that Mary witnessed the scourging, though. She was at the cross, but she wasn't. It's not in the scriptures that she was there, though.
Okay, but what value do you think they bring in this scene?
It was the moment where Christ rises up after the striking of the rods. He looks over at his mother, and that gives him the strength to carry on. That's another beautiful moment, right? But Mary isn't the driving force for why he needs to go through with this.
Yeah.
So you could take it or leave it, in my opinion. Yeah.
I look at it more as a break from just the whipping, just have another perspective of it, because that would have just kept going on and on and on. We need to pivot to something else, at least for a second.
It's good to have people like, good-natured people react to it realistically as well. You see all the evil responses, right? And you just think that this is such an unrealistic world. Like, how is this Earth, right? How is this 2,000 years ago? Like, it's insane by witnessing just how evil a lot of the people surrounding this the torture was. And then when you have the Marys there and what is it, John, they care and they respond sadly. They're sad, they're disappointed, and it's a depressing moment, as we are all feeling. And I think those characters, you probably would lose hope in a lot of this movie if it weren't for them trailing around, offering a realistic reaction to the horror that's being shown. Because if we don't have them trailing around, then we're literally just seeing Jesus, mangled and tortured the whole film without, the public, like the reasonable, common sense person's human response to what's actually going on, which is, most people and how they respond to watching somebody, especially, Jesus, be treated terribly. Yeah. So let's move on to the next part. Any final thoughts about this part before we go on further?
Have we heard from you, Gen X man, about this?
I don't believe so.
You're the bottle.
That's where it's from.
Yeah, what's going on? Yeah, you're talking about drinking. It sounds like you just popped a cork, but okay.
I took myself
It's
off
you.
If I'm going to respond to this,
it was you the whole time. I didn't mute you.
Dang it, I'm discovered.
okay. No, really.
No,
I don't
the
think
only
you've said
thing
anything.
you guys said a lot of great things. The only thing I'll add to all of this is if you had somebody close in your life, a relative, a friend, whoever, and you were forced to watch them go through all of this, I think you'd probably pass out, or you would just curl up into a ball because it wouldn't be bearable.
Right, and that's a part of the scene that, hypothetically, if Mary was there, she wouldn't watch, she would walk away. Yeah, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, they all handle it. I can't imagine how horrifying any of this is. They have to be blessed or something to be able to endure watching all of that happen. All three of them, really, because, they're able to watch all the way through. That's pretty incredible. But here,
it's sad, but at the same time, they know who he is. So it's one of those things of, yes, it's depressing. I'm watching this man that I love growing up. All these things happen. Yeah, but I know exactly why he's doing this. He's told them for years, this is what's going to happen. And now it's finally here. But you know what's going to happen afterwards, too. So I guess obviously it's terrible to watch, but there is some kind of comfort that this is happening for a reason.
All right. Well, here, let's go on to the next part. So this is when things. Let me try to find a good picture for this. I think we're about to get to the crucifixion here. Before that happens, we have one more meeting with Pilate. Jesus, of course, after all this happens, after he's scourged, he just looks terrible. I mean, his whole body is just torn apart. And he's very weak because of this. I mean, you can't factor in that he's probably hasn't been fed or had any water all this time either. And all of this stress, I doubt he's had any bit of rest. There's definitely no rest after, having to just sit or stand with all of these wounds. And here he is. He's brought before Pilate once again and the Sanhedrin, and they all vote for him to be crucified. So that's what happens. And before we get to the crucifixion, I have this as a small chapter because I think something we don't really consider much in the story of Jesus's passion is his the crown of thorns. I think this movie, it doesn't spend all that much time with Jesus receiving the crown of thorns, but it is a really harmful image. Like I think it really stands alone. The soldiers, they don't just make this this crown of thorns. It's not like a little pretty crown that goes on your head. I mean, they stuff it onto his head and they dig it into his skull. And as they do this, they are spitting on him. They are cursing him. They're saying terrible things. They're kicking his head in. Not kicking, but they're like smacking him in the head. And the thorn crown is digging into his head, and they're pushing him around. And his head just keeps getting bludgeoned with these sharp thorns on his head. And it's a really awful sequence. And it's not very long, but I felt like, this is another one of those examples where, at least in my impression of reading the story in the Bible, it's just not one of those more potent moments that stands alone against all of this terrible hell that he's going through. But here we spend a lot of time in this moment, and it's definitely worth reflecting on. So, I guess my first question in this barrage of chapters here is, why would all of these people after seeing the pain and torture that Jesus had endured, wish for him to die, right? Like when he is in front of the Sanhedrin again, or in front of the crowd of people, and they saw just how mangled and, lifeless his body was, they still were not satisfied. Why is that the case? Was there any bit of humanity here left, or was this totally like a satanic influence that's, clouding their judgment?
Oh, Satan did his job. Satan did his job. He was there the whole time. You could see him several times, gliding right through. He had his grip on all of the soldiers. They were all lost. The very law, it's so obvious. They're just treating him like an animal at this point. He's a dead man, and
what's wild to contemplate is, we're familiar with Jesus being crucified. We think of this as being a rare thing, but apparently the Romans crucified hundreds or thousands of people. This was a very common way for them to get rid of people, and that's just dumbfounding, because I guess it's just excruciating way to die.
Another thing about crucifixions, that something that we were talking about at my church just this past week, is that they were always done outside of the city. For people who were coming into the city to see it. It's a statement. It's basically showing, the Roman power, is instilling fear into people. And another thing we talked about is how most crucifixions rarely ever happened to any Roman criminals, who were actually Roman born. They were mostly done to people from countries that were occupied by Rome. But the reason why they want Jesus dead and the scourging isn't enough is because he has to be silenced completely. Otherwise, he's still alive, but it's like, he may not, if he's still alive, he may not be able to come back from these wounds and such, but he's got to, he's got to be gone completely in order for the enemy to win. But of course, even then, it wasn't going to win. He wasn't going to win. He's still going to come back. He said, "I will come back from the dead in 3 days. Tear down this temple, and in 3 days I will build a new one."
It makes you think about, well, then why did Satan play into that plan? It's because he's not omniscient. He didn't know what was going on entirely. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. He wouldn't have influenced these events.
I want to bring up something he said, Boaca said earlier. And he said, most religions teach the same principles, have a God and a Messiah, and explain the same worldly events. Who cares what name a person calls God? Aren't the teachings basically the same? No, they're definitely not. Jesus is all about love and compassion. He's the one that preaches, love those who do not love you. That is the greatest form of love, not to hate. A lot of his teachings aren't popular, right? A lot of it is a trial to live by these teachings. And, my faith is guided by, the effect Jesus has had on my life. I'll definitely say that. I've had so many answered prayers, and I've seen God's work through me, through my faith. And I've seen that in a lot of my friends and how their lives have changed. And, I just think there's so much evidence to prove that Jesus is active and living God that I really don't have any doubt about it. So I don't know of really any other miracles that have been documented in other religions. So that's,
well, I'll go
that's
even further than that. I'll go even further than that. Boaca. So other religions, they have gods and messiahs. Okay. Did the God and Messiah in the other religions ever sacrifice themselves in this way and then resurrect?
Right. Exactly. And also because Jesus himself says, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." So he's basically saying there is no other way into heaven except through me.
Yeah. Just want to spotlight that. Thanks for being here, Boca. We got some new. Let's see. I don't know what your name is, buddy. You're profile is horrifying. Just as a coin has
It's one of the demon children.
Yeah, for real.
Oh
It's
my
worse
God.
than that. Just as a coin has two sides, both valid, so Jesus Christ has two natures, both valid. Huh, interesting. That is a horrifying profile picture.
Hey, wait. Maybe it's inspired by the Primate movie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh gosh,
Oh,
funny. Let's see. Anything else here? All right, cool. Great. Well, let's move on over to let's see what's next here. Yeah, I think we pretty much covered the crown of thorns. That's just something you don't really like. It's like part of the image, right? It's part of the experience of his passion. But I think Mel Gibson just did a great job, really pushing how awful of an experience that was. It wasn't just wearing a crown, it was deeper than that. It was more painful, and it's just crazy. Jesus, he goes through so many humiliating things in this, and he just doesn't affect him like emotionally or spiritually. He's so strong in that way. And that inspires me. I want to be like that. I don't want to let silly words, which in his case are not silly, but in our case most of the time insults against us are silly. I don't want to let them get to me. I don't want to let them stop me from doing what I'm supposed to be doing here on earth. So I think either way, if you believe or don't believe, Jesus, his life and his message is just a strong message. And a lot of values I think everybody could respect. Servant leadership, that always works. Servant leadership is never a bad thing. And humility, love, compassion, these are great. Selflessness, they're all hard to do, and he makes them work. And gosh, Jim Caviezel, it's like you just get lost in his role. You don't even think of an actor when you see him playing Jesus in this. It's just so real. And I think something interesting is following his passion. There's you have levels of really horrible imagery, right? And horrible things you see, but they each have their own value to them, and they're each harmful, and they all affect us as an audience differently, and they compound, and it all works real well. I don't think it's too overwhelming where we can't take it, but it compounds to create this sequence that's real. And with each compounding level of pain, it just makes it that much more real. And you see Jim Caviezel and his appearance and his performance as Jesus, it changes a little bit, and it kind of withers further based off of all these experiences. And that makes the entire sequence of the film just that much more realistic. And here we are during this next chapter. Jesus Christ, he is, broken, with flesh torn apart. He has to carry the cross now. And, as we mentioned earlier, he's got a long trek with this cross. I would love to know the distance he had to walk with this cross. And, it's not as simple as him just carrying a heavy cross. Just think, he hasn't had any water. He hasn't had anything to eat. He is covered in terrible wounds. He's barefoot, walking on rock, and he's being beaten while carrying the cross. It's really just every factor against him here. And while he's wandering through the streets of Jerusalem, he's got thousands of people mocking him and spitting on him. I mean, there's just nothing good going for him at this point. And this cross, it's heavy, it's burdensome. And while all this is happening, Mary, Mother of God, Mary Magdalene, and John, they try to follow him along the way. And as the story goes, and everyone knows, Jesus, he falls several times. And I think it's interesting how in this movie, during these moments he falls, onlookers, they offer kind of different perspectives viewing his passion, right? And we have, like you mentioned earlier, Kyle, one of my favorite moments as well is Mary seeing her son in flashback format as a young boy falling over, and she in real time she races to rescue her son Jesus Christ, an adult man who's in tremendous pain. And at the same time, she's looking back on that moment when she saw him as a young boy falling in pain. And that was
and then
really
she runs after him with these outstretched arms and her hands in front of him.
Gosh, man. And that also lends to show you the innocence of Jesus, right? Jesus, he always preaches about, be like a child, have the innocence of a child. That's the way you obtain heaven, right? Is to be like a child. And I think a lot of us wish we were innocent and had that same sort of innocent love that children do.
Well, he says like, humble yourselves like children, and then you will enter the kingdom of heaven. I mean, it's like there are children who are willing to admit, they're just more real. Children don't lie. They don't. Well, they do lie, but they're more.
They're not really proficient at putting up a facade.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas adults are, because of their life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's a lot more pride and arrogance in adults than there are in kids. I mean, kids, yeah, they can still have that, but not in the same way as adults do, because of life experiences and such.
Here's a picture. This is a better picture
with Simon.
Yeah. So I'm about to mention him, actually. So, while he's on this long trek, Veronica also approaches. She comes to his side and wipes his bloodied face with her veil. And then I think around the same time, Jesus, he's obviously just depleted of strength. He gains a helping hand from Simon of Cyrene. And he's very reluctant at first to help carry the cross. And he indicts Jesus as a criminal here, right? That, he had this coming. He obviously didn't know what was going on, I imagine. And he comes along and he helps him with the cross. And it's interesting how this character, he comes here and we see just how heavy that cross is. Because
300 pounds.
Yeah, you see them and they, I don't know how Jesus was able to carry it alone at all, because this guy, he's already having a hard time carrying it when the other Roman soldiers are helping him out in the first moments. And then you have Simon and Jesus, they're carrying the cross together, and they were having a tough time. So it's really, really spectacular to see that Jesus was able to go that far with the cross, nevertheless. But, talking about this entire trek as a whole, how did you think this played out so effectively? What do you think was so convincing about this entire sequence, where you just get lost into believing this is actually what happened?
Well, I don't know if this is a direct answer to your question, but I really like that character, the Simon, the Cyrene that carries the cross. I mean, because he's like, he has nothing to do with any of this, and he gets pulled into it. And the longer he's engaged in helping Jesus, he begins to relate to him and becomes a defender of his, right? And for me, that's what makes this whole sequence satisfying, is seeing this guy come in from the outside, from the sidelines, and then he's a main figure in all of this, and I connected a lot with him. I really liked the way they did that.
I really understood his perspective of why he refused to get involved, because who knows, he could have. I would have done the same thing probably, in terms of he could have ended up at the top of the hill and been crucified. Maybe he would have been mistaken as another criminal. I've been worried about that.
He had a daughter with him too, didn't it?
Yeah, he was trying to get home and just trying to, get his daughter safely out of that crowd, because it's like, who knows, his daughter might have gotten trampled or something, or plus the Romans were there trying to, keep her away from them, worried about what they might do. But then, of course, like, he gets pulled into it, and he's like, well, I got to go along with this, otherwise I'm gonna get punished, and who knows what will happen to my daughter or something like that. And of course, you have people in the crowd begging him to help, and then of course you have the woman who wipes his face. It was just nice that they added that moment to showcase, everyday people who, even if they never heard Jesus before, they still know that there's something different about this man, that he didn't deserve this, and they just wanted to show, you know, at least with the woman, she wanted to show him some kindness and sympathy because she sees the torture that he's being dealt. You know, he's covered in blood, he's got the crown of thorns, and he's struggling to carry the cross, and she just wants to give him a moment of compassion. And then, of course, with Simon, when he sees those Romans just, again, kicking him around just for the fun of it, when he can't even get up, he's just had enough of it. And he's like, I see this man struggling so bad. Yeah, I didn't want anything to do with it a few minutes ago, but now I feel so horrible for him. I have to do something.
I think this is interesting. I think the Thyfix, sometimes we carry the burden of others, even if they are strangers. That's interesting. Yeah. Gosh, I mean, you see somebody that really needs help and you want to help them, right? I can't imagine how infuriated I would be to see somebody, you know, go through anything like humiliating in public and just being openly pushed around like that by any authority or just people on the street. You know, it's just injustice, right?
Yep. Well, one of the best lines from Evan Almighty was, to change the world, all it takes is a random act of kindness. And that's what this was. A guy just saw this and said, okay, I'm going to help you out.
Gosh, I think it's like Jim Caviezel, his performance during this walk is just insane. I don't know how you act that out. Like, you could just tell that his character is so worn down, and he's just burdened by infinite pain in all sorts, and you could just feel it. You could feel his entire situation and everything that's happening to him. You can feel the weight of the cross bearing down on his torn skin, as well as the horrors that are you know, around the corner, that he is going to be nailed to a cross and die. You know, it's you could just get all of that feeling from his performance. And I'm glad we spent a long time on this walk so we can, you know, really soak in just how awful this entire situation is. And it's not just a few words on a page. You know, it's a real thing that happened, and it's almost an unbelievable sight to behold.
And also the cinematography really helps to emphasize it as well. Yeah, you know, the slow-mo, sometimes it can be a little excessive, but I definitely think there are moments, especially when he's carrying the cross through the city, that it adds to Jim Caviezel's performance, especially like when, you know, that one shot where he's kind of twisting as he's falling down and losing his balance, and the camera kind of angles above him, and you just see him just drop into the dust, and it just scatters everywhere. It's so effective. You know, it's a perfect combination, I think.
I think what also made this entire trek so impactful is the flashbacks, right? There's so many great flashbacks that we have here. We have Jesus teaching the Sermon on the Mount, where he says, you know, blessed are the persecuted. You know, he has the moment where I think it's Mary Magdalene, right, that was caught in adultery.
Yeah.
And that's when he says, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, and everybody drops their stones. And that's also an interesting flashback, because you saw him like tracing the line in the sand, and it was like exploding under his finger. That was really interesting imagery. And then you also have, oh wait, what were you going to say?
That is one thing that is a condition of different things. Mary Magdalene was not caught in adultery. That's not scriptural. She had demons that were cast out, and that's
okay.
It.
Maybe I'm
different. It was a different woman. Yeah,
oh,
no. Gibson chose to combine this, and I know that it's a thing that people think of. I remember even in Da Vinci Code, when the female character is talking to Ian McKellen, and he mentions how Mary Magdalene was in this painting. You know, this is that was the one. Then the Last Supper painting, he was trying to point out, this is the conspiracy that they made in that movie. It's it's a fun fiction, but it's still fiction. that there was a woman in the Last Supper by painting by Da Vinci, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says that's Mary Magdalene, and she says the prostitute. You know, it's a thing that people think that is associated with her, but that's not scriptural. So
that's interesting.
It's a beautiful moment. I love the slow motion, and it's Mel Gibson's hand that's drawing the line in the sand. Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah.
And wasn't it also Mel Gibson's hand in that shot where they're hammering the nails into Jesus' hand?
He's the one putting the nail in the hand.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
And then you had you just have so many reasons to hate people, like hate the Romans, hate the Pharisees. And, you also get this sequence where Jesus, he reveals one of his final commandments, right? To love one another as I have loved you. And, I just think all of these, they were obviously, tension releasers, but at the same time, they were just so inspiring. And it wasn't preachy, it was showing us what he did, and it was showing us the impact it had on his followers, but it wasn't preachy. It lended to his character. It lended to the truth of what happened as part of the story. I wasn't trying to convince you of anything. It's pretty impressive it's able to do that. Do you guys have any final thoughts about this this long trek with Simon and the encounters he had along the way before we move on to the crucifixion?
Visually speaking, carrying the actual cross is a great image to have on film. It's likely that Christ was only carrying the crossbeam because the totality of the weight of that cross would have been between 300 and 400 pounds. And after the physical toll that he took from the scourging, to carry 300, 400 pounds that's intense. So just carrying the crossbeam would be about 100 pounds. It's more believable that at a certain point he would carry it, and then he would need help from Simon to do the rest.
Right.
That makes sense. But 300, 400 pounds. I'm doing squats with 30 pounds or 150 pounds, and that's you can do 10 or so. You have to take a break at a certain point. But to carry to put on 300 pounds on a bar and to truck it around a room over my shoulder. A few months ago, there was a whole bunch of some wood, just a cut up tree across the street from where I am, and I wanted to take it in for some firewood, and they were pretty heavy, but they were not 100 pounds heavy. I would say maybe around 50 pounds, right? And I'm lugging them over my shoulder, and I got some cuts on my neck here. I had a bad scrape on my elbow. And while I was doing that, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about what Christ had gone through and all that. And it's not even anywhere near what he had to carry, and the amount of just with a crossbeam would be difficult enough. And the splinters that would have gone into his already, tortured everywhere. It's just, it's unimaginable.
All right, good final note, Kyle. Let's talk to the chat a little bit here. Our friend Megan the Texan. I can't imagine the amount of hate that Jesus is confronted with. It boggles my mind. Yeah. Gosh, isn't it terrible that this before the stream's over, I want us to talk about how this movie, like why it's controversial, right? I think that is like such an interesting topic. Let's save that till the end, though.
Sure.
Definitely. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think because I don't know. I want to know. Said, Mel has his faults. However, I think he has the ability to tell amazing stories on film. He really does. He's awesome. You know what? He was at a convention. He was signing autographs. First off, his autograph is a terrible price. It was like $400 or $500. Like, no, I'm not dropping that. And I would be disappointed. Like, you meet your heroes, you're gonna be disappointed. So I'm not gonna beat him. But yeah, great storyteller. This is interesting. Eddie the Beast Hall couldn't have carried that full cross after a scourge like that. Well, Jesus, he is supernatural too. So I don't know. I believe that he carried the cross. I do. I mean, he could do anything.
But Simon was there.
Well, yeah, true. Let's see. Yeah, you're not wrong about that, Procfile, 100%. And those radicals ruin it for everyone. Yeah, radicals of anything are annoying, right? So, yeah, I feel you. Gen X-Men had something to say. Yeah, I now think those everyday kindnesses are one of the best impacts we can make anytime and anywhere.
Absolutely.
Procfile says, I don't know about the world, but acts of kindness can have incredible effects on individuals, especially if you recognize how much they need it at that time. That's true. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good points. All right. Well, let's move on to the final scene here. This is where, well, actually, we're going to get into this pretty deep before we finish. So we got a little bit more to talk about here in the very end. This is a dense stream. the last one we ended a lot earlier than normal, but there's so much to cover here. So I'm glad. I appreciate all your patience as we go through this. But here we are. Jesus eventually makes it with the assistance of Simon at Golgotha, where he is to be crucified. Jesus is stripped and he's nailed to the cross. And I guess Gen X-Man revealed to me that Mel Gibson's hands are shown hammering the nails in one shot. And we see, I mean, this is this is another one of those examples of a prolonged demonstration of how long the crucifixion process is. And, you see that it takes a while to nail him in, to get him lined up. And you also see that, it's not as simple as just nailing his hands into the cross. The hands have to line up, and they pop his arm out of his socket so they can line it up properly. How terrible is that? And, later on when, Jesus passes at that point, but you see the thieves, they have to bust their kneecaps so they die quicker. It's just so terrible. I'm so glad we don't do anything like this anymore. But nobody needs that. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, people who are doing things to children. Yeah, the bad guys from Sound of Freedom. Sure.
All right. Well, in this film, 2,000 years ago, the cross is raised, and that causes further agony. It's terrible. First, they go through this entire process of nailing him in, and they pull his arm out of his socket, and then they push the cross over on his stomach, and then they push the cross up, thus giving him even more pain, and it just keeps going. And he's hanging on by a thread at this point. But as you said, Ian, I think you made a great point that he is in charge of his own life. Nobody can do anything to him that he doesn't wish. So he's holding on until he gives himself away. And during this crucifixion, he is crucified between two thieves, one who is repentant and he receives the salvation from Jesus at the final hour, and the other one is terrible, and he's hating on Jesus, and he's just really frustrated in the position he's in, and he wishes Jesus would, if he's all so powerful, why don't you rescue yourself and us? And obviously there's more to Jesus than that. And, what's inspiring about this scene, as depicted in the Bible clearly, is, from the cross, as he's getting nailed in, he is saying, he's pleading to God, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And gosh, it's like that is the most, that has to be one of the most powerful lines in history.
Mm-hmm.
You are being tortured, actively tortured, and Jesus is wishing for God to have mercy on you. If that was happening to any of us, nobody's thinking any positive thoughts. Naturally, you're not going to. You're going to be thinking awful things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, pretty powerful stuff. And, as he's up there, Mary, she stands at the foot of the cross with John and Mary Magdalene. And Jesus entrusts Mary to John as he reveals she is his mother, and, Jesus is her son. And before Jesus dies, he says, "It is accomplished," and he commends his spirit to him. And when he passes away, or before that happens, he tells the thief that wishes for salvation. He tells him that, you will be with me in paradise. Which to me, that is, of all biblical stories, that's my favorite. Is the thief? At the last moment, he asks Jesus to forgive him, and to accept him into the kingdom? And he says yes. It's like, wow, that's really amazing.
Mhm.
But when he passes away, a storm builds and an earthquake shakes the temple, tearing the veil and just tearing the temple in half itself. And all of the soldiers, they're in panic mode at this point, and they start bashing the other thieves' knees, like I said, so they die quicker. And a soldier pierces Jesus's side with a spear, releasing lots of blood and water. And while this happens, we get a very strange moment where we see Satan, who is like on this very desolate land, a very small, desolate, dry land, screaming in defeat as Jesus arises on the third day, and we see him come out of the tomb with holes in his hands. So, yeah, thus ending the story, but we have a lot of questions and material to get through here. So, kind of wondering what you guys think. Despite the unbelievable anguish and pain that we've witnessed Jesus go through leading up to this point, how does it take that next step to show another added pain of the crucifixion process to the mix?
Because I mean the humiliation.
There goes that cork again.
Yeah. Pour a glass of champagne.
Throw your bottles away.
What's with you and the streams and people with bottles?
I don't know.
I'm just having fun with you guys. I was waiting for you to
Hey, cheers to you, Gen X man.
Glasses here. I'm like touching together.
Oh, real quick, Logan, I am Catholic.
Me as well.
Gen X man is Catholic. Luke
Same
is
here.
Catholic.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Logan. Good to have you
Yep.
here. Thanks for joining us. And it looks like this guy, Thyfix, is Catholic. Nice.
Thyfix.
Even though
Just the
he has a
profile
horrified
picture does
face,
not
though.
do it.
It kind of scares us a little bit, Thyfix. Could you change that? Thanks.
They're Catholic Wolverine.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
What was the
I'm
question? I can't even remember.
The question was something to do
oh
with
yeah. Luke, you were gonna answer.
Okay. Being hung up there on the cross was just a form of humiliation to be shown in front of everybody. And also, I saw something a long time ago that the way he's like hanging, it's like you can suffocate. Your lungs will almost collapse from being in that position for so long. And that's just a whole nother thing right there. And he's bleeding out. There's just all kinds of things going on up there. He's just completely, I want to say hopeless, because he's, about to go up with his father and everything. But
He's not
humiliation
hopeless.
no, that's what I said. He's not hopeless. But it's humiliation is, that's all he has.
I don't think he feels humiliated. I think he's accepting. I think he's accepting his destiny here.
Because he won. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He did everything he
win,
had
yes.
to do, and look where we're at 2026 years later talking about it.
Yeah. That's a long time for the story to live, right?
Yeah. For me, it's like whenever I see that scene, especially like, I keep thinking how much more painful. It's painful enough with your hands, the nails going through your hands, but I'm thinking, I can only imagine how much more painful it is with your feet. I mean, it's going through bone. It's not just the flesh, it's the bone that they're literally piercing through. And then, of course, when they lift it up and it just drops down into that hole with that thud, I'm like, oh man, I can feel it. There's a part of me that feels it, and it just is. It's just really, yeah. The whipping part is the most painful part, but this comes pretty close in second. And just, but yeah, that scene with the two thieves, you got the one who's mocking him, and then you have the other one who he doesn't even ask him for forgiveness. He's like, you would be just in judging me. I deserve this. So all I ask is that you just remember me. He's not even asking Jesus to wash away his sins and let him into the kingdom. But Jesus has that look where he's looking into his heart and soul, and he sees the repentance inside of him, and he's like, "You will be with me in paradise today," because he sees the genuine conviction in this man's heart, and it's not just because he's on the brink of death. He knows that you could tell this guy probably has lived with shame of his actions for years, and now he's like, I deserve this, but this man doesn't. He shouldn't be here. And he sees that Jesus is God right there, and he doesn't expect much from him, but but still Jesus sees, like I said, he sees the genuine contradiction that he's going through.
The scene also shows that it's the simple way of how to receive salvation. It doesn't require that you get baptized and have all these things, yada yada. It's strictly coming from the heart and intention. The man was promised to go to paradise. And baptism is a good thing to do for public declaration, but it's not a prerequisite for salvation.
Well, I mean, it's still something that we talk about, because it is symbolic, but it is still a process that is part of your redemption.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus.
It's a public declaration. Otherwise, the thief wouldn't have been told that he's going to paradise.
Jesus was baptized himself by John the Baptist. He didn't do that for no reason.
Yeah.
He did that to display a public declaration of who he was.
Well, it
wasn't a prerequisite. It's not a prerequisite to get saved.
But Jesus,
a requirement is what I'm saying.
Well, Jesus did say you must be baptized, and himself. He said that. So if Jesus says that, it's not just public declaration. It's part of your spiritual journey of being born again. Because
if you don't mind, something I love about like this final encounter is, I think like I just love that scene where the thief, we don't know anything about his life before, and coming from the lips of Jesus that you'll be with me in heaven. That's like such a reassuring thing, and that's so powerful. I think it's in Luke where that I know there's like different, obviously, the different gospels have kind of differently explained passions for Jesus, and I think it's Luke where he discusses the thief and his in that encounter. That one's always stood out to me. I love that one.
I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah, I always enjoy that one, and I always I don't even really want to hear the other ones as much. That's always been my favorite, and I'm a little disappointed the other gospels don't cover it entirely. I think maybe one other does, but Luke, from what I remember, gives it a little bit more detail and light that it deserves. I was kind of afraid that it wasn't even going to be mentioned in the movie, so I'm glad they did that. But yeah, I think like in total, I'm just so glad I saw this. I think it was it's a movie that needs to be seen. I wish I would have seen this years ago. I think it's good to have that perspective, and it's a reality check that Jesus isn't like, it's just beyond words. Like a visual, I always learn by visual representation. I think a lot of people do. It's not just me. And if you're curious about Jesus's story, if you want to know what he historically went through, then watch Passion of the Christ, because it doesn't pull any punches. There's really not many. I mean, are there really that many historical, like, I wouldn't say historical epics, but historical films that are that honest, right? I mean, Saving Private Ryan was really honest and it was graphic, right? But I mean, beyond that, nothing really comes to mind.
Not that I could think of.
No.
Well, another Mel Gibson film, Hacksaw Ridge, definitely.
Yeah,
does not hold back. Of course, Mel Gibson never holds back. With those kind of stories. But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask a different question. Do you guys think, because, I just don't, I don't like gosh, how do I say this? Subtitles. I can't stand subtitles. I think it's so interesting, Kyle, that you watched the movie, or at least you tried to watch it without subtitles. That's respect for you. But could this movie have worked better, or maybe on the same plane if it was just all in English?
No, because like I said earlier on, that you have to pay attention. This is not background noise. You have to read the words of it. So it's just more engaging, I think, with subtitles.
Yeah, I don't think it would be the same in English. It wouldn't have the same effect.
You know what's funny? I almost had to think about it for a minute. Were there subtitles? I got so used to reading them that when I play it back in my head, I hear Jim speaking English.
Jim.
Yeah, that can happen. Yeah, that can happen. Inglourious Bastards is another movie where you kind of forget that there's subtitles.
There's subtitles in Glorious Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
We got to talk about that one again. Huh?
Is that in English?
It does have English in it. Yeah, partially.
That's Tarantino.
Yeah.
I think that's his best movie.
Huh.
In total about the movie, what do you think surprised you guys the most?
The scourging.
Yeah, that's it. Just the torture scenes of that we're actually seeing it. And it's not like, oh, 1 or 2 hits and it cuts to someone else. No, we're seeing hit after hit after hit.
Yeah,
the
there were
flesh
30
being ripped
alone
off.
with the 6.
Yes. The 6 were bad alone. Then it's like, oh, we'll just pull out this other thing.
I was really surprised by how much focus there was on Judas. Like, I didn't think we would spend that much time with him, but I felt like, when he was alive, he was pretty prominent in the picture here.
You felt for him big time. I mean, you felt his remorse and his guilt and shame.
Yeah, it would have been cool to see a moment, especially when he witnesses Christ falling down with the chain still attached to him by the bridge. And that could have been the moment where Satan leaves him, because you still have that jump scare of the evil entity that scares him, right? But that would have been a good transition to showcase that, based from the scriptures, that Satan had entered him. And you would have had this contrast of behavior, and that's when he feels that remorse, and he goes back to throw the silver pieces back to the religious leaders. I think that would have been cool.
Yeah.
That would have been nice. I think there was just I was surprised by like how artsy the movie was too. I think there was like so many. We've mentioned it just this whole stream. 3 hours in, we can't stop mentioning a lot of these like key moments that stick with you, right? You have Mary rushing to Jesus, and while she's rushing to him, she sees her young son. You have the dove flying above Jesus during his terrible trial in front of the Sanhedrin. You have Jesus dangling from a bridge, giving Judas a flicker of light in his eye. All of these little things. You have the devil at the end of the movie writhing in pain as Jesus resurrects on the 3rd day. Gosh, you just keep naming them, and that's art, right? I mean, this movie is art, and that's lost, right? I mean, it is lost, where you have just little key highlights that you can pick apart and remember like that, that are artfully done. They're not just inserted for no reason or purpose. They have they have a reason.
Well, one thing that is what actually happens in the scene when Satan is crying out when the camera rises is because of the temple being destroyed and the veil being torn. That's when he knows that the significance of that the old covenant is done, and that the sins of the world, there is an open invitation to be forgiven. That's why Satan reacts in that way, not because of the resurrection moment.
Okay.
Satan crying out to wherever realm he is prior to the resurrection.
Okay, I thought
in the film.
Okay. I thought he was screaming because he was banished to hell after Jesus went up to heaven. That's what I thought, but I don't know much about that.
Huh.
The scene, the clip, that moment is literally right after it goes from I'm looking at it right now. It's right after.
They are next to each other, right? I mean, the devil is like upset.
The temple,
and then
it's the temple. After the temple has the earthquake occur and splits it down the middle, is when it cuts to Satan looking up into the sky screaming. Yep.
And then it immediately cuts to the tomb, though. So can't you see how it could be either?
But actually,
No, because Mary is holding
Yeah.
Christ's body afterwards
Is
for a
that
prolonged period of time.
when they're lowering him down from the cross. It's
Okay.
it's funny you say, brother, that this is a very artsy kind of film, and I have actually thought of moments in this film that actually look very much like a Renaissance painting. You can
Oh,
tell
yeah.
Mel Gibson takes inspiration from a lot of those classic Renaissance pieces of art, especially that last shot of Mary holding him, as he's being lowered down. It's that famous painting of Christ being lowered from the cross. And but yeah, I mean, for me, it's just seeing what Christ went through for us. What the God of the universe literally chose to go through for all of us.
A proper representation of that event in history in approximately 33 AD.
Yeah, we're coming up on the 2000th anniversary.
Yeah.
What are you 2000th? Aren't we like, it's 2020, what is it, 2026 now?
Yeah, but if he was crucified in like
that's
33
right.
AD, then we'd be nearing that.
Okay, true.
mark.
There's a lot of debate about the accuracy of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's around that time.
Wow.
But this is the thing that you take away from this movie is that there were not enough movies that followed suit to portray biblical events in the same way that this movie did, even though you had Russell Crowe's Noah come out, but that was scripturally ridiculous.
Yeah, that was
sucked.
No, you're absolutely right, Kyle.
It had visual moments that were cool, but the intricacies of it were just ridiculous, and especially the part where Noah tries to kill his daughter-in-law to save the earth and the animals. What?
Tries to save kill the baby that she just had. But like, that's what you get when you have a director who has no respect for the original source material, the Bible. Mel Gibson, he's a Christian, so and he's very open about his beliefs. But so it's no surprise that he approached this movie with the reverence that he did, the respect for the Bible and the scriptures, but also historical reverence, and put in the research for it. Whereas Darren Aronofsky, he probably put in some research, but he's not, he's an atheist. He doesn't really have the same respect for it. He just takes it and, while there are some similarities, he takes way more liberties with it than really he should have.
Do you guys ever watch The Last Temptation of Christ, the Scorsese film?
That's one movie I actually haven't seen, and I remember, the reputation that has is blasphemous.
Yeah, I was.
Who knows? It might be.
That.
It might be because one could argue that Da Vinci Code is blasphemous because it says that Mary Magdalene had a relationship with Christ and they had children. They had a
that's
child.
Weird.
So I like the movie as a fiction. It's just a fantasy. I can acknowledge that it's blasphemous, but it's not so offensive that I won't watch it. I remember watching it a few times where it's a fun National Treasure-esque movie.
What'd you say, Gen X Man?
I think Willem Dafoe plays Jesus in Last Temptation.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's a shame. Well, that's a weird. I don't know. I don't want him in that role. It looks like our friend Thyfix, it changed his profile picture. That's much better.
Yeah, stick with that. Stick with that. Like, that is a huge contrast. That
is funny. Oh, our friend Boica says that has anyone in the chat not hit the like and subscribe buttons yet?
I like that he phrased it as a question.
That's the second time you brought it up too.
Yeah, I don't like, I used to say like, comment, subscribe, and I feel like it's kind of annoying. But it would be great if you did. That'd be great. Please do.
Yeah, it's better when other people do it for you. That's why you don't see any videos where I'm doing it,
I'll subscribe to you now.
I'll hit you up in the chat. It would be great, everybody. It does make a difference.
At this point, people know what to do.
If they like something, they'll like it, or sub. But yeah, if you're joining us from somewhere else, we would appreciate the sub. All these great channels here, you got their names right here, and their links are in the descriptions below. Let's see. Marilyn Barnes, a new friend. Do you guys watch The Chosen? I need to watch The Chosen.
I've not seen it yet.
I recommend it, absolutely.
Yes, definitely. It's like another great example of them showing respect for for biblical scripture, as well as putting in research for the culture, the period, the history, and the fact that it's shot in the States. It's not shot overseas. They first started shooting it in Texas, and I think they still do shoot parts of it in Texas, but I think they might have also moved to like Oklahoma as well. Now this new season, where it's dealing with the crucifixion, they do shoot the scene on the cross, on Golgotha in Italy.
Oh wow! Yeah, that'll be crazy seeing that.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I don't know if it's the exact same place where they shot the crucifixion for this, but I think they said it was in that area. Who knows? Maybe it is the same place.
Real quick, let me get to Boica. Sorry, Boica, I missed your super chat a while back. Episcopal, to quote Robin Williams, Catholic light, all the sin, half the guilt. We have bagels after service. Psh, thanks, Boica. Appreciate your support.
Yeah.
We still love you, Boica. Gen X Man says, I grew up Episcopal and ate many a bagel. He's had his bagels. Yeah, thanks, Boica. Let's see here. I have a... Oh, wait, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just saying...
Trying to say it for like 5 times. All right, let me start again.
Hey, it's been a long night, bro.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, I'm oneness apostolic.
Oh, nice. Wow. We got a very diverse set of faces here. Very good.
He's an epic stoic.
He's epic. He's super epic. Ian is epic. I can definitely attest to that. I tell people, Ian, I've been talking about you, Ian. I've been saying good things. I like Ian. I said, Ian's great. So I tell people.
I heard you say that. I'll vouch for...
Yeah.
The way you said that, you sounded like a mobster. You know what I keep saying? Ian's great.
He's going to get whacked.
You're funny.
Whacked.
Yeah, I was getting a little concerned there for a second.
Oh, Papa, Gord King's here. He says, if you rate the film lower than perfect, you're going to hell. Nice.
Well, luckily, this movie wasn't directly made by Christ. And so you don't have to worry too much about that.
Nice, Gord King. Okay, so Kyle, I want you to answer this question. Anybody else? What made Passion of the Christ so controversial?
There's a scene in the courtyard where Pontius Pilate is looking over the crowd headed by the Jewish leaders. There was a cut of the film where there was a subtitle that read, translating what the crowd was saying, and it read, "His blood be on our hands and our children." Mel Gibson was accused of being anti-Semitic.
That's in the Bible, though.
Thank you. So that's
the crowd says that.
So the anti-Semitic accusations are bullshit. That line is in the Bible. That's all he was doing, was translating what had happened. The Jews, the hierarchy of the Jews, were the head proponents of crucifying Christ in tandem with Rome. And that's how it was.
Wow. Yeah. All right. That's interesting.
Yeah. There was definitely a lot of that going around about this film, saying, "Oh, it's very anti-Jewish." And
is this why he was considered to be the anti-Semitic guy? That's why he was blacklisted.
He had also had a DUI drunken night where he had said,
"Oh, you don't remember that, Brawler?"
No, he had said that Jews are responsible for all the wars. And it's a little weird because we're in this time right now where Israel is pushing for us to get into a war, and maybe he isn't so crazy,
You can call him whatever you want, but you can never say that he's wrong.
I mean, you could say that he was drunk and out of line. I think he called an officer sugar tits. So there you go. So
that sounds like him.
But
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of people, when that happened, forgot the fact that, he has worked with Jewish people throughout his career, and nothing like that ever came up before. I mean, come on, Richard Donner, the director of the Lethal Weapon films, and then you have Robert Downey Jr., close friend of his, who's also Jewish, stood up for him, and there's that famous video of him from that award show where he basically told them, I want Mel Gibson to present this award to me because he was the one who stuck his neck out for me when my career was in was basically just stuck, and nobody wanted me because of my the controversies I had in the media with drugs and all that mess. And so he basically brings him up there, has him give him the award, and then he gives this speech to everybody saying, like, unless you are without sin, in which case you picked the wrong industry. You need to let this guy continue contributing to our art form. He's held the cactus long enough. So it's like, yeah. So he said these stupid things when he was drunk, and it's like, of course, everyone just immediately thought, oh, he's anti-Jewish and stuff. I mean, even Andrew Garfield.
Yeah,
directed him in Hacksaw Ridge. Andrew Garfield's Jewish, and he said he had concerns about working with him, but he went to go and actually meet with him, sat down with him, and talked to him, and realized, you know what, he's nothing like the what people have said about him. So I want to do this movie with him.
Wow, great, cool. Boica, real quick, you said Criticalist is true viewer-based reviews, not the garbage spoiled master's site or Mater's site. I don't know what that means. But tell me about Criticalist, because I think the Criticalist guy followed me on X. Maybe it was some other dude. I don't know anything about Criticalist, so tell me more about that. I'm kind of curious. Yeah, I think I might have let me see, maybe one more question. No, I guess the final question for me I got two final questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
It's okay, man. It's okay. I know you're going a little long.
Late. I know.
It's okay.
How is there's just I'm glad we've had this dense conversation about this, because I think it definitely deserves it. And here we are, we're still talking about it. How do you think Caviezel was able to pull this off?
How was Caviezel able to pull it off?
Yeah. How was he able to pull
performance?
This off? Yeah.
A lot of prayer, a lot of fasting. I'm pretty sure he took as much time as he could to really get his heart and his mind ready spiritually for this.
Yeah, and he had said the same thing about doing the resurrection. He did an interview in which he said he was gearing up and praying about it and all that. What? So he's not in it. Soon afterwards, we find out in news that he's not in it. Oh, and he's gearing up to shoot it. He's in it somehow. This is ridiculous that, at the last minute, he was recast. Come on. Get serious.
That's a weird take. I really feel like he's not going to be in it. I don't know why he wouldn't be blasting this movie from the rooftops if he was involved.
And we haven't seen any quote about him responding to him being recast or the recasting. I think it's just I think there are going to be different versions of Christ, perhaps.
Okay.
So something's gonna. I think he's in there in some way, somehow.
Okay.
And I think so. Yeah, he prepared himself for the passion, in real ways. Of he might blacklist his own career just being in this movie, and partially he did. I think there were potential roles that he could have been offered over the next 10 years or so that he could have gotten. I mean, especially after Count of Monte Cristo, which was very well received. I could imagine him being the lead in a big action movie. At one point, he wanted to be the movie Deja Vu, the Tony Scott film, which is an awesome time travel movie, one of the best. Stars Denzel Washington.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's a great movie.
But he was gunning for that role that Denzel Washington was in. But instead he plays the bad guy very well, I might add. he does a very good job playing a psychopathic, twisted, patriot who's setting off bombs. If you haven't seen it, you guys got to check that out. He does a great job in that. However, he wanted to, be the hero in that, and that's very fair. But I think there were instances in which he was held back because of being in the Passion of the Christ. And then there are a lot of movies where he's either in action movies that are kind of low budget. They're not bad. There's a good one called Transit. There's a fun action movie, low budget, but it's like a kind of a road trip thriller movie with a family. And it actually is a cool little reunion. Ian, I don't even know if you know this, but one of the bad guys from Count of Monte Cristo is a bad guy in Transit with Jim Caviezel.
I think I remember seeing some. I didn't watch the movie, but I do remember.
There's a bank robbery. They have a bunch of money, and the cops have a roadblock, and they plant the money in Caviezel's car with his family so that they can get past the roadblock. But later up, they want to intercept them. Yeah, it's a little reunion with the cast from Count of Monte Cristo.
That one. I'm very curious. I'm looking at it now.
Was it Villefort?
The one that he confronted in the bathhouse in the steam room.
Yeah, that's Villefort.
That's that guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. So anyway, I think it partially affected him, but yeah, he was still able to get work. He had a very successful run in the TV show Person of Interest. So it wasn't a huge detriment, but I think it had a partial effect on his career.
Gen X-Men, you loved Person of Interest, didn't you?
He's asleep.
He drank the bottle.
I thought I was muted, but I wasn't. I loved Person of Interest. It's a great movie. It was very prescient.
Show, right?
The AI
TV
age
show
that we're now entering. So yeah, more than recommend it.
Gen X, I know you loved the show. It was a show. You remember?
Yeah. Didn't I just?
You said movie.
You said movie.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry.
You watched all
the movies. Yeah.
Series. It was great.
Hell, they're long episodes, aren't
all
they?
All the 200 movies.
Oh, that's funny. Nice. All right. I guess my final question is, I thought watching this, I felt like I was watching something to the quality standard of Gladiator, Godfather, Braveheart. It really just had that feeling. What do you think, to conclude? How did you feel that they were able to create a Christian film to those quality standards?
Well, because
that's a big ask to be on that level, and this is on that level.
Well, I'll tell you real quick. Balls. Mel Gibson's balls. This is the reason the movie was that great.
He bankrolled that movie.
Yes,
The Passion. So it's your money. You do what you want, I guess.
And also, when you have a director of his caliber, his quality and experience, you're going to get a really great, depiction of this story. And again, because he's also a Christian, he has respect for it, and he just wanted to do it right. He felt like, hey, if anybody's going to do it right, it might as well be me.
Well, I mean, no one was going to do it. He was at one point. I think he tried after he self-funded and made the film. He shopped it around to distributors, the main distributors of Hollywood, and they just no, go away. We're not touching that. And then it took a small scale. I think New Market was the distributor. It's a small distribution company, and they made bank off of this. So good on them. And
it's nice that it was
shame on the studios and the distributors that turned this movie away.
Yeah, they probably are interested in the next installment, right? I mean, you see a lot of these studios, they're embracing Christian film a little more. I know I think it was Lionsgate. They did one with Alan Richardson. I can't remember what it was called. It was pretty good.
I vaguely remember what you're talking about.
That was a
The
good
one with
one.
him and Hilary Swank.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was like a bigger studio getting involved, right?
But wasn't it another one of those family inspirational? This guy. I'm sick of I'm sick of it, dude. I don't want it. Those
more convincing than the trashy, cringy ones.
That's I'll go with you on that. I'll take your word for it. I just don't. Where are the gritty ones? It's in the vein of this. get down and dirty, real and true. Just come on. That's what I expect.
I mean,
this movie set the precedent, and they really haven't superseded it. And Mel Gibson is making The Resurrection that would supersede it, that has the potential of doing that. And it's been far too long for us to wait for that.
I mean, I think one of the closest ones that have come out recently that's similar to this, not nearly as graphic, but still in the same vein, is House of David. You know, it's not like excessive blood and violence, but it still has more caliber of the quality of this film, you know, than most others, you know, than most other productions that you see.
That's good to hear, and I aim to check that out. You're the second person to recommend that to me.
My one qualm with that show is the obvious shots of AI in there.
Oh,
yikes!
Yeah, especially like when they depict the falling of angels from heaven. It's like it's so in your face.
Wait, how recent is this?
It came out. The first season came out 2 years ago. It's on Amazon.
Oh, you're talking about House of David.
Yeah, House of David.
Yeah. Okay, good, nice. Huh.
And now it's like they got that Moses series with Ben Kingsley coming out, and I saw the trailer for that, and it just felt like it was all AI.
Oh, really? Wow. It's Amazon making it?
It's a wonder project, but they are working with Amazon now.
Okay.
Like, I know they also have later this year a film about young George Washington coming out in theaters.
I want to see that.
That looks
July 3rd or 4th or something.
Yeah. It should be July. It should be the 4th of July with a George Washington movie.
Everything always comes out the day before they say, you know, like it comes out July 3rd, but the official date's the 4th, right? That's how it works. Yeah, it's always that Thursday night.
Yeah. I think it's July 1st that it's coming out.
Okay. Oh, the 1st. All right, we're all wrong. Here, let's get to a few more of these chats and then we'll bounce. Let's see here. Hey, first off, we are not bashing Mel. Not a single person on this panel is bashing Mel. We love Mel Gibson. So don't worry about that, Boca. You won't find that here.
Maybe he's talking about someone in the chat. A few people in the chat were saying
we
it.
like Mel Brooks, too. Boca for $5. Thanks, Boca. As I said before, Mel has his humanity. However, he can tell a good story on film. Yeah, we all say stupid things and we all make mistakes, right? I mean,
all of his movies are in the caliber of greatness, except for Flight Risk.
Poor Flight Risk. Hey, he was having fun, Kyle. Can't we have fun?
Not when you have all these other ones coming out. No,
I wasn't aware that fun could be badly written.
Oh, well, there is badly written fun, right? Yeah. I mean, let me think.
What's an example?
Spaceballs.
Oh, jeez.
Badly written? I wouldn't describe it as badly written. I mean, the jokes, some of them fall flat. It's not as great as other Mel Brooks movies, but yeah, I wouldn't say badly written.
Badly written. Let me think. Badly written fun. I don't really watch any badly written movies that I can. Oh, Jack. Okay, you're gonna hate me. I love Jack and Jill, and it's badly written.
Oh,
that's most of.
I'm gonna
pretend I know of its reputation.
We all have
but here's the difference, dude. Is that's an entirely different genre.
Yeah.
That movie is supposed to be. Flight Risk is supposed to be a thriller, and it just ends up being unintentionally cringy and hilarious. Yeah. And tedious at times.
Yeah.
They should have
It's also a comedy. I mean, obviously it's a comedy.
Yeah, part of it is Topher Grace is miscast in that movie.
Yeah, definitely.
And he's trying to do these. I think they allowed him to improvise on set and it doesn't work. They should have gotten somebody who was more serious.
You should buy the 4K steelbook of Flight Risk.
Why?
Because you love it.
So is this opposite day? You're just directing me to do opposite things?
Actually, wait, it's April Fool's right now.
How about that?
On your side of the world, not me.
For you yet in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow, that is crazy.
Nice to remind me.
Everybody.
I like it.
That's weird. Be aware, people, that it's April Fool's. You're gonna get tricked.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Just with Jared says, solid stream, fellas, getting close to EFAP territory, brawler. This is the longest stream we've had, Jared.
Yeah.
This is the longest. We're about to conclude though. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it. Proc file. Flight Risk happened, but boy, did that movie suck.
It was a disappointment.
Yeah.
For me, it was just a disappointment. It didn't need to go out like that. It had potential, and I was excited for it.
I'm not
6
kidding.
months in advance.
I got together a group of 10 guys to see it.
Yeah,
I got a group, big group, and we had fun. But that was not the best choice. It was a huge group of dudes. Were you there, Luke?
No, not for Flight Risk.
Maybe that was before we started hanging out.
I wasn't invited.
Yeah. I think that was before we started doing stuff.
He wasn't invited. You're muting them on streams too.
Yeah.
He was playing with the bottle.
False accusations. What's going on here?
Marilyn, you've been fun, Marilyn. Be sure to subscribe and catch us in another stream. It's great having you on in the chat. She says she liked Person of Interest.
Marilyn Barnes. Sounds like a detective or something.
Ooh,
Sounds
Detective
like
Marilyn Barnes.
Good character name in a movie.
I like Gord Cake. He said something funny. I could be wrong, but I heard a Finnish actor was cast as Jesus for the resurrection. I guess it truly is finished. So dumb. Nice. That's a good one.
Good dad joke.
That is. I don't know where he comes up with these.
Well, his name is Papa Pumpkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm confused. Gord King is Papa Pumpkin.
He's the same guy. It's him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't he? His channel used to be called Gord King.
Yeah,
right?
he was Gord.
Yeah,
King.
and he changed it.
And then there was something happened to that account, so he changed it. He's well on his channel. Thyfix, good night. Was fun to find you guys. Oh, thanks, Thyfix. I hope you join us. Sub.
I encourage you to keep the insignia profile picture.
Although it would be nice to know why the other picture was on there first.
That was funny. That was really funny. I'm glad we convinced him to change it. Oh, Boica for another $5. We appreciate you, Boica. The worst Brooks film is better than any comedy in the last decade. Modern society won't allow real comedy anymore. Well, yeah, I love Mel Brooks. And, Spaceballs, I enjoyed Spaceballs. I didn't like it. I liked it. It's a mix. I respect it. I like.
It's not as good as Blazing Saddles. It's not as good as Young Frankenstein, and it's not as good as Airplane. But it's a good comedy.
It has some good moments. Yeah, it has some good moments. So yeah, Mel Brooks, and he's still alive and doing stuff. So respect. I think that's it, everybody. I think we're out of gas here. We went 3.5 hours.
I crossed the threshold. I don't give a shit anymore. I'm good.
I don't know where you get all this gas, bro.
I don't want any judgment about any of my streams that are now available, by the way, that I've hosted. And Brawler was on for the Scream one. We also did a Superman one, so those are still available. Let me plug on the weekend again that my fireside chat video is going to be released, and me and a 30-year pastor, he's going to bring some of his knowledge and experience talking about the Passion of the Christ. So that'll be released and available this weekend. Come and check it out, guys.
Good. Yeah, be sure to check that out. And everybody, be sure to check out all the channels here. Luke, Kyle, Ian Morrison, Gen X Man, and World War Joe, even though Gen X Man doesn't have a profile. So just watch out here. Sub to me, and you can catch Gen X Man. Ooh, you never know when he's going to appear. How exciting. But yeah, we definitely appreciate your support, everybody. If you liked what we had to say today, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to Box Office Brawler. Subscribe to all these great channels that were here tonight. And God bless you all. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Give him the Duke and give him the dog. Watch Passion of the Christ. We all say yes. Good night, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
What kind of person are you? Are you the kind that sees signs, sees miracles? Or do you believe that people just get lucky?